With that being said, Julie Bacon's here with us today for the morning, and she has some awesome team building activities that I think will be really beneficial. I also want to recognize Phoenix Union High School District and all the Creighton volunteers that were helping yesterday and today. So to organize vaccines, I got mine yesterday. If I seem a little groggy, I did not sleep well. I will say that. I kept turning on my arm and being like, oh, it hurts. But thank you to Phoenix Union and to the Creighton volunteers. I saw quite a few out there. So really tremendous efforts. I know a lot of people are struggling to get appointments at other places, and that took a huge weight off of our teachers and our educators. And with that, I will let Dr. Lewis share more about the agenda.
Well, good morning, everybody. I not only want to say thank you for all those who helped set up the logistics and our partners for vaccines for yesterday and today. So there are people in line again today and volunteers out today, and lunch is being served today. But I also understand several of us on this meeting had vaccines yesterday and might be experiencing what the impact is of having a vaccine. Can you just kind of give us a little signal if you were vaccinated yesterday, and if you might have a wee bit of struggle from the sore arm or a fever or something light that might be irritating you? We just want to be in touch with your well-being. So how you doing? How you doing on that?
It hurts.
It really, it's the whole arm.
You still hurting?
Yeah.
Right now, huh? It's like I usually sleep on this side so wonderfully, and last night I had trouble with that. Then, a certain time, I started feeling a little bit of fever, and then chills, and I didn't like it. Anyways, I was drinking a lot of liquids, and I woke up okay, much better. Just the arm now. But nothing that I haven't been through. So, and I know it's a vaccine, so no fear.
Hilda, how are you doing?
Kind of the same. I mean, my arm really hurts, and I had a low-grade fever this morning. So, but I took some Tylenol, and last night I actually took a little bit of NyQuil because, it was hurting.
Yeah, I know mine hurt for a good 24, almost 36 hours. But nothing else. Yeah.
But it's only my upper arm. I don't feel anything like in the lower part of the arm or anything. So,
Lindsay, are you doing okay?
Yeah, my upper arm hurts. I was definitely tossing and turning. I'm like on hell. I sleep on my side. I kept waking up like, oh no, this is not comfortable. So a little bit of a low-grade fever. My stomach's bothering me a little as well, but we'll survive.
All right. Well, whenever we need to step up and do a break, we will. Just if you log off in mute or visible, we'll just be like, okay, she's out. Or Julie and I will ricochet about break times just to kind of shut down and get that Zoom brain off our head a little bit. Amy, are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Did you get the shot yesterday?
I did. Yes.
Okay, good. How about Sophia? Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I did. I'm doing okay. I didn't get it yesterday. I was able to get it before, but my only side effect was the arm. Like literally somebody punched my arm and it was a dead arm walking around, but I didn't get any of the fevers, chills, nothing. It was just the arm.
Good. Heather, how are you?
I don't have mine scheduled till the 30th.
Okay, so you're like, oh boy, I'm listening to all this and my anxiety is going up. Okay, everybody be quiet about the vaccine now. As I think about this last week, I will just say that I have been on an emotional side of things. And I don't know what it was, but watching the inauguration followed by the celebration of Martin Luther King, this well of, I didn't know it was inside of me. I didn't know all the things I was putting in boxes or putting on shelves or suppressing or whatever the proper word is. But I sobbed at the inauguration. It's funny, it still wells up for me, excuse me. And I just think about the messages that we heard over and over again, not blue, not red, one country, not win, not lose, togetherness, unity, and the beautiful aspects of character as we deal with hardship. And I was really deeply moved to the point of tears, and it felt so good just to, I'm going to say, cry, and be aware that all the tension that had been in the air that I didn't realize I was holding in fell out of me. I would never have told you, oh, I was going to cry at the inauguration. I just like, oh, it's on, whatever. And then it was like, so that was a surprise to me. I would be curious too, what it meant for you before we begin, you know, our work together today. And before I introduce Julie, I mean, where are you in your own feelings about the turn of events? And I don't mean politically as far as Democrat, Republican. I just mean in terms of the transfer of peaceful power, peaceful transfer of power. What are your reflections? Heather, can I ask you first?
Yeah, I feel like my anxiety level is a lot less because I don't feel like we're going to be hearing information from tweets every single day. I was able to share it with my kids because I was teaching online. And so since we're talking about the branches of government, I was able to share that with the kids and able to talk to them about it. And so we had some really good conversations about that and just how we can speak respectfully to people, even though we have disagreements. Because some of my friends online were posting hateful things on my timeline, and I just respectfully on my Facebook timeline. And so we had a conversation with that with my kids and how I took care of it and just said, I don't post things on your timeline, and everybody's allowed to have their own opinion. But on my timeline, I'd appreciate if you kept it respectful. And those people ended up deleting their comments and leaving it be. So it was a good conversation to have with my own students while I reflected watching it, but I also did cry, and some of the kids asked why I was crying. And I guess it's just the sense of relief that, you know, we don't have like a ticking time bomb right now. We have somebody that wants to help everyone and not focus on their own agenda.
Amy, are you available to share any comments? I'm not sure I see your video and your mute off, and I understand. I just didn't know if you wanted to share.
I mean, I don't really have anything to share. It was not a peaceful transfer of power. You know, I mean, we have a lot of work to do. I mean, we really do. I was happy on Wednesday, but it was a hard 4 years.
Yeah, the reflection on the 4 years and the turning point of that day had to be, that's really notable, that it was indeed a difficult transfer. You're right. Sophia?
Yeah, I also cried. We watched it together as a family. Especially with my 11-year-old and my 4-year-old, and especially what happened, you know, prior with the insurrection that happened at the Capitol. It was very hard for him to understand why certain things happen. You know, we live in this happy bubble here at home. So I think he figures out that the world outside of our home should be the same and should act the same. So that was really hard for him. And it was a hard conversation I had to have with him. And seeing the inauguration, and especially there was something that really resonated with me when the president was speaking, and that he said that you know, like, if you voted for me, I'm gonna fight for you. If you didn't vote for me, I'm gonna fight for you. And he was gonna fight for, you know, the nation with his soul. And just hearing those type of words that we haven't heard in the last 4 years of somebody who just really wants to bring unity on both sides. We understand that we're not all going to agree on everything. We're going to have major disagreements. Some are going to be hotter than others, but at the end of the day, it's in what's in the best interest of the American people, right? So to hear him say those things and having my son listen to that and be like, okay, so this is how life should really be. It was really powerful.
Angel, any reflections as this week passes, as we move into Saturday here?
Well, first, on January the 6th, my wife and I were crying. We came to United States as immigrants, and we look up to this nation, and we compare it to Mexico in the way that Mexico is very corrupt, The politicians do whatever they want and they get away with it. And gosh, after 4 years and not being able to let go, it made us cry. It felt like if I was back in Mexico. And anyways, I called my children around the TV with us, and they say, what's going on? And I say, just watch. This is a historical momentum. It will not happen again, hopefully, ever. So let's just watch it. And David, he was sobbing. He says, this is my nation. What are they doing this to my nation? So on Wednesday, I didn't want to watch it. I was busy helping people, crisis, a girl pregnant, wanting to do crazy things. So we were busy, but I was praying as it was going on. I was praying, and at night I come at 7 to the practice of the worship at church, and it's all DACA recipients. Oh my God, I cried again when I see them, full of hope, and saying, man, I want to do it again, because the first time they barely, when I got the money, I sent it and they returned my money. I don't want my money, I wanted an opportunity. And he goes, well, you can do it now, really? And it was exciting. It was like Christmas on Wednesday evening. So I didn't get to see it on Wednesday, but I saw the reaction of my people. And there's a lot of hope. And yeah, there's a lot of things that we differ from mentality, to not necessarily politically, no, right. Or other foundations. But I guess that there's gonna be a negotiation, huh? Get to a point where everybody gets what they need, instead of, if it's not my way, I take my toys away and you guys don't play anymore. So I'm happy. I'm very emotional. I'm very emotional. Wednesday, I put my mask on and I started hugging all the young men and girls. This is people that came to church and they flirt with each other, and then I got married. Now they have children, and they see me as a grandpa. So there's a big family here. And I was just hugging them and encouraging them to, if they needed something, go and sell the dog and get some money. So that you can go ahead and apply again for DACA. So that's my perspective. Thank you for asking.
Lindsay, what's your shift, if any, over the week?
I mean, definitely a lot of the same sentiments. I was really nervous going into Wednesday, just really hoping that nothing terrible happened. I had meetings on and off, so I had it streaming on my iPad, and I would pause it when I had to talk with the teacher. And so I ended up at lunch kind of catching up, but I definitely teared up. Amanda Gorman was just breathtakingly beautiful. And I think that made me fully lose it. And just, she's so young, but she was so poised, and it was just perfect. I mean, there's no way to describe. So, and I don't have students of my own anymore, but I keep in touch, with my Creighton families. And obviously I talk with all my teachers and vaults, and I'd been hearing about how the week before, how difficult that was, as Angel was talking about. And I was really worried. I was really worried about the mental well-being of my previous students and the, kids and families in my current district. And the tone on Thursday, after the inauguration, was just completely different. I think Angel put it perfectly. The hope came back, and that kind of the weight off the shoulders. So definitely, we do have a lot of work to do. I agree with Amy. There's still a lot of work to do. None of this was perfect, but there's been a shift.
Well, Julie, as you can hear from this board, there's a beautiful sentiment of hope and a beautiful sentiment of willingness to do a lot of work. Guys, this is Julie Bacon, for those of you who don't know her. Julie is a lead board trainer at Arizona School Board Association. And she is with us today to help us work on team building, work on the role of the board, clarify some of the policies that guide and provide statute for the board as it serves on the dais. Julie's also been a board president and still currently serves on the Paradise Valley School Board. So Julie, as you hear those words, I'm sure it's going to resonate with you as you think about the day you have planned for us today. Thank you so much for being with us, Julie.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I just want to, a couple of housekeeping things. We are live streaming on YouTube, so I just wanted to let you all know that. So my home computer's over here, making sure that we're staying on that. So that should be available for anyone who wants to watch it. And it does look like there's a few people watching. So I wanted to let you know that. The other thing, I want to just caution us on the use of chat. It's fine for housekeeping kinds of things, but not any discussion because we are in an open meeting. So board members shouldn't be messaging each other in that feature because it's not visible to the public. So those are just a couple of things that we always talk about when we do these virtual trainings because we get into a mode because we're using it all the time in meetings and even in our personal lives. So I just wanted to put that out there. But again, thank you for having me here. I am serving in my 11th year as a board member in the Paradise Valley Unified School District. And as those of you who are veteran board members know, and those of you who are probably the new board members, this is a really difficult time to serve on a school board. I think it is never before have we had the kind of division and divisiveness that we have in our communities. And in my school district, we have felt that acutely in many different ways. So I want to thank you for your service and your willingness to serve because I think it's incredibly important for us to do that. So I am going to start sharing my screen and slides so that we all can go through this together. And you can all see that, correct? Okay, great. So we'll start today just kind of setting the stage. So we want to make sure that we're set to have a productive meeting and one where everyone has a voice and everyone can speak their mind. So we'll do that first, and then we have a very packed agenda. So I'm crossing my fingers that we're going to get to all of it because it's a lot, but I think it's all really important, and it will help us as we move through the day. So we'll look at roles and responsibilities. We'll do team member style exercises. We'll look at policy, and I have policies, your policies on slides, so we can look at them, read them, and then talk about them if there are any questions. Then I have the governing board expectations, Creighton's governing board expectations. I thought we could review those, see if there's anything different, new, editing, and then also your communication protocols. So that's where we're gonna go. So we already know everyone's name, so you don't have to tell us that, and we all know who is on the board and who isn't on the board, who has been on the board and who hasn't. So the thing I wanted to have you talk about is your experience as a student, because I think your experience as a student reflects how you feel as a board member. And I'll just give you a little feedback on my experience as a student. I loved school. I loved it. But I was not a great reader. And I was in pull-out reading when I was in second grade. But the thing that is so great about that is I didn't know there was something wrong. That no one kind of showed that to me. So it is so when I think about that, when I think about how that just seemed normal in the classroom, maybe other kids didn't think it was normal, but I thought it was normal. I was no different than anybody else. So when I think about school, I really think about how do we serve those students who feel different, who and how do we make them part of the community and feel as valuable as everybody. So that's my experience as a student. Who would like to share first?
I'll
I
go.
can go if you want. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, Heather.
All right. So I am an Arizona native, so I went to the Mesa Public Schools. I went to Mesa High, so Mesa Junior, that's not even there anymore. And then Mesa High, I was always excellent in reading, but my math was where I struggled. I was just kind of average in math, and I didn't really like it. The schools were a mixed group of kids, so I always grew up with, all sorts of different students. A lot of Mormon people because I lived in Mesa, so a lot of my friends were Mormons, and white, of course. But there was also a lot of Hispanic people there, and I don't remember there being a huge amount of Black people there. But the one thing that always stuck out to me, and I think created something within me that later on I had to look at, was in high school, there was a Black girl that constantly bullied me. I've always been a bigger person. I was never a small person, and she literally bullied me almost every day, to the point of where I just would try to stay out of her way. And so I think that kind of warped my view for a while on Black people, and that was something I had to reflect on later in life as I grew into an adult. And I think it also led me to the reason why I work, because I am a school teacher. So the reason why I work in a school that is mainly minorities, because I just love working with that group of students and parents. But it took me a long time to get there, and a lot of reflection and I'm still reflecting. I think especially with the Black Lives Movement and stuff, there's been some hard looks lately into my own prejudices and how I look at things. And because we always say, oh, I'm not, how could I be prejudiced? I work with this group of students, but there are those racial things going on. And it's a constant battle that I face about now being more thoughtful about it when I look at things. And having those conversations, especially with my wife. She and I talk about those things a lot. So I think that's kind of where I am today.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Sophia, do you want to go next?
Sure. So my views as a student are two completely ones, because I grew up in Mexico, and I went to school in Mexico until 4th grade. So my view as a student from being over there, it was very ritual and traditional. We had to wear uniforms. I remember in the mornings they would check our hair, they would check our nails, if our nails weren't cut, or if our hair wasn't done in the ponytail that it was supposed to, or if I wasn't wearing the correct socks or the correct uniform, they would call our parents, and they would have them come pick us up and be like, you trim her nails, or you do this or you do that, and then she can come back to school. And then our school wasn't, the school that I went to, it wasn't a private school. So I remember we didn't even have doors in our door stalls for the bathroom. And academically, it was very advanced. It was kind of like a culture shock when I came over here, because when my parents transitioned me from 4th grade over there to here to the United States, I was almost advanced in a lot of things and nobody caught that for me. You know, I was in Peoria Unified High School and I felt like, you know, everything that I was being taught, I had already been taught in Mexico. I was very advanced. School kind of has always come easy to me, but nobody caught that. So I started kind of like acting out behaviorally, you know, and I was that student that was missed, you know. I would kind of like make jokes or, you know, try to do things to piss off the teacher. But it was, and now that I go back and look at it, it's because I was bored, you know. I was always the first one done. I was always, you know, I would be like, okay, I'm done. Can I go to the bathroom? And I would leave and I wouldn't, you know, I would wander around the class, you know, the school and not really do anything. And I also grew up in a school where when we got to junior high, I mean, I remember us getting detention for walking in a group of 4 or 5 more people and they considered us a gang. I remember I was called that I was in a group gang because I was walking with 3 other Black people and 2 other Mexicans. So I had a lot of racial prejudice happened to me and my friends just because of the way that we looked in school. So I think that's why I'm a big advocate now. Now it's funny because when it happens to you, then you really don't know if it's right or wrong. But when you get older and you start, you know, learning and seeing things, you're like, holy crap, what they did to me was totally not okay, you know? So now being older and being in this kind of setting, that kind of stuff happened to me, you know, going to school. So it was, you're right, the experiences as a student really, I guess, turns out how we want to do things and how we want to make sure that it's as inclusive as possible, you know, or those kids. Like, I know that we talk a lot about special education, but how are we missing our gifted kids? You know, there's a lot of things that really is no really protocol on testing them or doing anything, and we're missing these kids and then they turn into these behavior issues, which I was the one, you know. My parents always got calls like, here's Sophia again at the office, but she's like a straight A student, but here she is, and nobody did anything about it. Nobody tested me, nobody asked, you know, pushed me to do more. It was just like, here she is again, come pick up your kid. Like, what's wrong with this kid? But that's what was wrong, is that I was just bored, you know. So yeah, those are my experiences.
Thank you so much again for sharing. I'll let Lindsay just raised your hand, I saw.
Yeah, the teacher in me. I mean, I have some of the same sentiments as Sophia. School came pretty easily to me, and then when I was younger, I loved it. But as I got older, I definitely started acting out more. I'm also not a great auditory learner. If I read something, it sticks with me. I have photographic memory. I loved the doing. And so, you know, when we had teachers that would just stand up there and talk, I'm like, it was nothing, you know, and I zoned out. And I got really involved with theater, tech theater, which was awesome. But I definitely started, you know, trying to like I ditched class at points in high school, you know, certain classes. And I mean, I think that really shaped, you know, thinking about, as Sophia said, like, we miss kids. And I've even reflected on this in my own classroom. We focus so much on the kids that we know it's very obvious they're struggling, you know, and that means that we might be missing the kids that are just average and getting by. And we're definitely missing those kids who need more, you know. They can get the content easily, and it just makes me reflect on how can we meet the needs of every single student. And I think that's really, really important. I also went to Hopi for elementary, and then I went to Phoenix Country Day School for middle school. And I told my parents that I wanted to go back to public school. I felt like being in the private school was sheltered, and I grew up in Paradise Valley, you know, I'm obviously white, and I just felt like it wasn't real life, like it wasn't a representation of the real world, and I really didn't want that. I wanted to meet different kinds of people. I wanted to learn about different cultures, and not in a, you know, kind of superficial way. So I went back to public school for high school, and I'm really glad that I did. I think it made a difference in who I became as an adult, and definitely has motivated me to advocate for our public schools. You know, now that I'm in education, I think the diversity and the culture and what everyone brings to the table is so important, and being able to see all of the strengths our students have and all the different ways they learn. So it's definitely shaped who I am as an educator. So I'm glad that you brought up this question, because we don't often reflect on that.
Yes. And I don't want to force anyone to talk about this. So if you're not comfortable talking about it, that's fine. But
I'm fine.
Okay, good.
We're just waiting for the ladies to go first. As a gentleman. Well, in Mexico, I was doing great. I love school. Math, I love that it was like if I was meant for math. Reading, I don't like much reading. Like Lindsay said, I will look at a full page. Okay, I got it. Go for the next one. That was my mentality. When I came to United States, I was 14, almost 15. There was a big change, because we used to play in the cantinas in Tucson with my father and go home like at 3 a.m, and then had to be at Tucson High School for class, show up for class. At the beginning, the English teacher, who was the first one, Mrs. Segawa, she will get mad at me. She would say, "Why are you always sleeping?" So I explained to her, and man, she was my favorite teacher after that. Number one, the first hour, she will give me a little room to sleep. Secondly, on the second hour, she will encourage me to bring songs that I could play in English, and we learn with songs. Talk about an amazing person. And secondly, talking about races, people, colors, languages. I came in late. In Mexico, I finished junior high. Junior high in Mexico is 7, 8, and 9. And so I came in for the 10th grade here in United States in Tucson. And I came in late, I guess in the middle of the first quarter. And I wasn't able to get the bilingual classes. Everybody wanted the bilingual classes. They were easy, I guess. And I had to go into the real English. And the Mexicans there don't speak Spanish. They are US born people, and they don't know the Spanish well. So I will go to my neighbor. Hey, ¿qué dijo el maestro? He says, I don't speak Spanish. There goes my help. But all the Black people and the Anglo people, they will take their time to teach me. So during lunchtime, I will be hanging out with the güeritos and the negritos, and nobody knew why. And I don't even know the jokes. I don't even understand the jokes, but they like me. And I used to play the guitar. We used to play during lunchtime, La Bamba and Dana. Oh, Dana. It's not for you, Dana. It's just the song that we used to sing. And we used to sing, and we got to know a lot of people through the music. And I realized that even though I did not excel, I could not excel in high school, but I learned, and I graduated, and then my dad left, and I had to take care of my mom and my siblings, and just last year, 2 years ago, I went to Phoenix College to do a assessment test. And the guy there says, when was the last time you went to school? I go, 1989. He goes, Mr. Campos, you should pay some math classes, some English classes, and then do the test. I go, why? He goes, so that you can get better. I go, no, but I want to know where I am first. So let me take the test. He says, I told you. So I go in and I take the test and I answer everything that I knew. And anything that I did not know, I didn't try to guess. I just said, okay, I finished. So I walk out and the guy tells me, I told you, he was too fast. Probably you didn't answer many questions. I go, no, don't worry, but thanks for your counseling. I'll see you in a while. I went for a sandwich, and then they called me, and he was surprised. Are you sure you haven't been in school since 1989? I go, yeah, because you came above the 93% of the students that just graduated from high school. And I go, that's why. I go. Anyways, I didn't get many things. I didn't earn many rewards at school. I graduated, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm happy with my life, and I love my teachers. I love school. I wish I could have done better opportunities. And then I love my teachers. They were so gracious with me. So they don't owe me anything, and I think I gave them some happiness. So we're fine. That's me.
Thank you so much, Angel. Hi, Amy.
Hello. Hello. So, I mean, I've told this story before, and I've kind of reflected on it. I think I grew up in Vermont since I was in 6th grade. And even some of my friends don't realize that that's like only half of my life. I actually grew up in Philadelphia. I was born in Philadelphia, and we moved back and forth a couple times because I think my parents struggled with education for their kids versus having a job. There aren't a lot of work prospects in Vermont. My parents were social workers and teachers. So from 1st grade through 4th grade, I was the only white kid in my class that entire time. And I was at 3 different schools. My parents sent me to school on the public bus when I was in 1st or 2nd grade, I can't remember. And I remember a man wanted to drive me home because he didn't think I should be on the bus. And I came home and told my parents about that, and we switched schools the next day so that I would be able to walk to school. And my 4th grade teacher, I remember my parents complaining that she couldn't spell. She was a terrible, terrible teacher, and she was really mean to me too. And I remember my dad working with me every night on spelling and math, and we were required to read a certain amount of books. That was, completely outside of school. We switched schools again. And then in 5th grade, I had my favorite teacher, Mrs. Gordon, who really just, I think she knew, that it's hard to be a minority, even if you're a white kid. And believe me, I think I recognized that I did have privilege because of my color. The Carters were in the White House at that time. My last name was Carpenter, and some kids called me Amy Carter. I recognize that there was something that I had that a lot of my classmates didn't, but I was still like a terrified kid because I had a target on my head every day. And sometimes, depending on the color of my teacher, it would be good for me or not. If I had a white teacher, I was a teacher's pet, and that was a problem. But Mrs. Gordon was really someone who I think took notice of me, and, she would take me aside and give me like tips and just really took to me. And I just remember, it was really, that was a game changer who your teacher was. And then we moved to Vermont. Oh, and this whole time I was always like the smartest kid in my class, and that was also a problem. We moved to Vermont, and then I was the worst kid in my class. I mean, such a discrepancy. I did catch up, and for the most part had a great middle school, high school experience in Vermont. Really privileged, I think, actually, to end up finishing my K-12 career there. But as a kid, all of my friends were Black. My parents' only friends were Black. They were very involved with the civil rights movement, and specifically, they were very involved with welfare rights. They were friends with, their best friend was this woman named Roxanne Jones, who was the first female Black woman congressperson in Pennsylvania. And that was one of her missions was welfare rights. So my parents would take me to protests put me in a box, like, and I would be there all day with them while they protested. And I really don't understand why that was their specific mission, but I feel like, you know, that really did form me, part of who I am. And I recognize the discrepancies in education very much, and they're still, unfortunately, so deep today, and I'm frustrated by that. So that's part of my story.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody for sharing. I think that gives us a really good starting point for, you know, maybe what called you to board service and how you feel about it as you're going through the work that you'll be doing. So, okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the norms and expectations that we have for today. And these are the norms and expectations that we routinely set. So I just want to go through those and see if there's anything that we need to add when before we go any further. So be truthful and honest, actively listen without judgment, seek to understand the perspectives of others, actively participate because everyone brings value. It does not matter whether you all agree or if you're the person who has the, you know, kind of the minority opinion, everybody brings value. Ask clarifying questions if you don't understand or something doesn't make sense. And let's always assume positive intent. We are all here to do good. We would not be board members working for free if we weren't. So, and then just to be respectful in tone and manner. That's all. Just be careful of the way you speak and the way your nonverbals come across. So is there anything that I missed? Anything else that anyone wants to add to that list?
Not really, Julie. I just have a quick comment. I just really miss the part about sympathizing with people being on Zoom. So I just want to clarify that out, that I wish we could be in person because body language has a lot to do with it too. Yeah. I know being on camera, it can be like distracting. If, you know, I'm at home, I have kids, I'm sure other people have kids at home and things can be distracting. And I just don't want to convey the wrong message for any of us, you know, and I really, really wish that we were in person. And I feel like when you have that face-to-face contact, it's more personable and it's more relational. So yes. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, great. Jennifer?
Hi, everyone. I also wanted to state that I miss very much the food that the Creighton School District provides. So those are your new board members have missed out. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the attorney of record for Creighton. I work for Gust Rosenfeld. And Dr. Lewis has invited me here today just to assist in any way that I can. So Julie Bacon's worked with me as well. So I'm just an innocent bystander for most of this meeting, but if you need me, I'm here to assist.
Thank you, Jennifer. And why don't we have the staff introduce themselves? I mean, I think everybody knows Donna, but Eric, do you want to tell us your role and what you do and just so it's on the record?
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I too miss the opportunity to be together in person. I'm Eric Dupin. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the school district. I'm in my 17th year as a member of the team here and happy to be in service.
Thank you. Hilda?
I'm Hilda Waters. I'm the executive assistant to the superintendent and the governing board. And I'm in my 29th year with the Creighton School District. And that's about it.
So new board members, this is the most important person on this call. Not all of anyone. So thanks, Hilda.
Thank you, Julie.
Susan?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Lugo. I'm the Executive Director for Human Resources. I think I'm in my 23rd or 22nd year, so I don't have Hilda beat. Welcome. I also miss the in-person feeling, and I'm just here to answer any questions. Sorry if I look a little groggy. I got my shot yesterday, and I'm not feeling 100%.
Yeah. Yes, and we're going to keep that in mind as we go through the day, take some breaks, give people, because it sounds like a number of people. And you're all making me nervous because I have my vaccine at 2:00. So I think I'm just going to tell my husband, that's it. Once I get that done, I'm just coming home and laying on the couch.
That's what I did. I went to bed and
Yeah.
pretty much slept all the way, but it didn't hurt a bit. It's just grogginess today.
Mm-hmm. Well, let us know if people need breaks. That's something else that we can add to this expectation, that it's always good to take breaks. And Jay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jay Mann. I'm Chief of Business Operations and Development with Creighton. It's my 6th year. I've had one of the jokes my friends tell me is I just keep moving south because I've worked at Cave Creek. I got to work when Julie was a governing board member at Paradise Valley for a few years, and then Madison, and now 6 years so far going strong with Creighton. And I keep telling my friends in Tucson, I'm not headed all the way to Tucson. So just thrilled to be here. It's not in person, but I'm so thrilled that we at least have the technology to be able to have these conversations and see each other and get some time together. So thank you for letting me introduce myself. Appreciate it, Julie.
And I think the other thing that is hard about these, about Zoom, is the really focusing on being present because there are other things happening around us. So that would, I think, is something we can add to this list as well. So let's get right to work. We got a lot to cover and I want to get through as much of it as possible. We're going to talk a little bit about governing board service, the roles and responsibilities. This is a graphic representation of board service. So we had a graphic artist come to new board member orientation. And so some of the stuff that she drew we're going to use as we go through. So just wanted to put that in there. And it's amazing. I think all of the new board members were there with us that day. How quickly she just came up with this. It was crazy. I know absolutely no ability in artistic endeavors at all. So this is a question that I think veteran board members will know the answer to, but how many bosses does a superintendent have? By show of fingers on your hand, how many bosses does the superintendent have? Yep, 1. And here's why. Because the people who put 5 up, you're not totally wrong, but legally you're wrong. So you only have power as a board with a quorum in a publicly noticed meeting. So the evaluation that you do is an evaluation as a board of the superintendent. That does not mean that you don't have input. 5 members have input, but it is just one person one entity is the boss of the superintendent. Now, those of you who put 5 up, I'm sure Donna and many other superintendents can tell you, yes, there are 5 personalities to manage and 5 board members to work with and understand perspectives and where they're coming from. So the job of a superintendent is hard when it comes to the board relationship, but it is just one boss. So what is the authority of an individual board member? None, or at least no more than any other citizen. So if I walk into one of the schools in Paradise Valley, I have no more power or authority than anybody else who walks in. The thing that we like to talk about in here is the perception of power. So there is the perception of power when you are a board member and you're in the district that you serve. You're going to have people think you are their boss. You're not. but they may not understand that. So your authority individually is nothing, but be mindful of the perception of your authority as you're going through your job. And what's the authority of a governing board as a whole? Obviously, a lot. There is a lot of work to do. There's a lot of responsibility, probably never felt more acutely than it is right now. So those are just some kind of starter questions for us. So Title 15 is Arizona's education code. There's two main statutes, 15-341 and 342. And 341 is a mandatory. It's a list of things governing boards must do. And 342 is a permissive list of things boards can do. And I'm not going to get into this in any kind of depth other than to say most of those duties are delegated duties, they're delegable. So while a board has oversight function, the day-to-day operations of the district are really the responsibility of the superintendent and school staff. There are a few things that they cannot do for a board, and that is approving policy, passing a budget, and the hiring, firing, and evaluating of the superintendent. So those are the things that no one else can do. Now, there's sometimes questions about the other HR function because you do approve everyone who's hired by the school district, you approve. But those recommendations come from the superintendent, and boards aren't involved in the actual process of the hiring. They just approve the hiring. So the board's role is to govern and setting direction, looking at strategic plans, strategic goals, monitoring progress toward those goals. Those are things that boards do. So kind of that 30,000 foot view, you're looking at the big picture of the school district. And the superintendent's role is to manage the day-to-day operations, implementing the policies, and establishing plans to meet goals set by the board. So those are things that the superintendent does. And it is sometimes difficult to feel, to understand that balance that happens, that needs to happen. So as you go through your service, there may be times when someone says to you, that's just not your job. And that's happened to me more than once. This has been a difficult, at times it's been difficult to be a board member. I'm a social worker and I am a problem solver. So when there was a problem, I wanted to solve it, but it's not really my job to solve it. So it took a little bit of counsel from the superintendent and other board members, but I finally got the hang of it. So for those board members who are veterans, I'm sorry, you've probably seen this overstep exercise before. So this is one where we want to decide, is this an appropriate use, an appropriate thing for a board member to do? If it is, I want you to give me a thumbs up for oversight. And if it's really just not appropriate and kind of crosses the line, I want you to do a thumbs down for overstep. So board member comes in to meet with superintendent. The board member is adamant that the district adopt a new math curriculum. His brother's a teacher in a nearby district and has told this person the great materials are in this curriculum. The board member has lots of information about textbooks and materials and would like to share it with the whole board for approval at the next meeting. So would this be appropriate or not so much? Yeah, not so much. Besides the fact that there are actually laws that govern curriculum adoption in Arizona, just this concept of one board member bringing something forward and expecting it to be passed with really without very much due diligence is not something that you'd want to do. And this is I don't think unusual. These are real situations. I did not make them up. But it is hard to know the role is of the board. So this is just this is just an example. So any questions about that? Nope. Okay, let's keep going. So here's a graphic that we like to use that just kind of shows the board authority and the oversight of the management. You set expectations and parameters, and then the superintendent's authority. And the line in the middle of that is dotted for a reason, because there is back and forth. It's not, you're not isolated people. You're working together as a team to get something done. And so this is one of the superintendents that I've done training with calls this the hamburger graphic. I think he was hungry when we were doing it. So here's another overstep. During a board meeting, several members have questions about expenditures that were in the budget they approved, including the purchase of new technology for the high school. Board members are curious how the money was spent, and they want to make sure teachers are receiving professional development on the new technology so they know how to utilize the materials in the classroom. So does this seem like an appropriate oversight or overstep? Yep. Oversight, right? This is your job. This is your job. You have responsibility to make sure that funds are spent appropriately and responsibly. So you do have a commitment to your taxpayers in your school district. So this is certainly something that would be an appropriate question for board members to ask. The board superintendent relationship is really important, and working together as a team is critical. So what we know from NSBA's key works of school boards is that when either tries to take over the other's role, everyone suffers. And so involvement with administration and operation functions by board members distracts from some of the other things that are really important that you do, and distracts the superintendent from the work that they're doing. So communication protocols and team member style can help. So that's something that both of those things hopefully going to talk about today. So that fostering positive relationships. And we talked about assuming positive intent, acknowledging others' points of view, identify each other's key values and leadership styles, and then try to build up that relationship capital through positive interactions. And it doesn't have to be a positive sitting at the dais interaction. It can be a positive before you start the meeting interaction, talking about children, talking about work, talking about other things. I think sometimes board members are afraid to talk to one another, outside of meetings, because open meeting law can be seems so kind of overwhelming. But if you're not talking about board business, you're okay to talk about personal things. You just have to be careful where you do it, when you do it, and how many of you are doing it at the same time. So I just think, trying to build those relationships is important, and creating opportunities to communicate. Like today is a great opportunity for the board to get to know one another, to talk things through, and to really understand the perspectives of one another. So one thing, we're going to do team member style. We've been on for about an hour. Are we good to keep going? Or do we want to take, okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. So let's keep going ahead. So next we're going to talk about, we're going to do the team member style. And everybody got a workbook, correct? You have that with you? Good. So we are going to, we're going to talk about 4 kinds of team member styles. You're going to identify your personal style. We'll talk about capitalizing on strengths and opportunities to improve in terms of trouble spots that your style may have. And then we'll all talk about, if you're willing and comfortable, sharing what your results were from the team member style quiz that you will be doing. And then thinking about, how do we take advantage of everyone's style, because there is value in many different styles. So that's just something that we'll also talk about. So the next thing that we will do is we'll talk about this, benefits of knowing each other's style. And it does help in terms of interpreting behavior. And I'll tell you a story later about how my training partner, Nikki Whaley, and I have used this team member style to really understand one another and the way that we communicate. So it really does work. So in your workbook, there should be a sheet kind of like this. I am going to give you about 3 to 5 minutes to fill this out. So in each question, there are 2 items. You have to rank it, assign a total of 5 points with no fractions or decimals. Okay, so the only options are 5, 0, 4, 1, 3, 2. That's it. So I want you to do that right now. Don't do any tallying until everyone is done, because the tallying gets a little bit complicated. So I can see it looks like Heather is done. Amy said she's done. Donna is done.
I'm not.
Okay, thanks, Angel. Okay, are we good to go? It looks like we are. So now what I want you to do is separate those two sheets. And you'll see on this that there are shapes associated with your scores. This is definitely one of those exercises that's easier to do in person, so I apologize. What I would do if I were you is I would do a piece of paper like this with all the shapes and then write down all your triangles, all your diamonds, all your circles, all your squares. Each shape should have 9 different scores. Okay. So let's do that next. And this is, I mean, I needed my phone to do this so I could add, but probably some of you are smarter than me, so you might not need that. So I'm going to give you a minute, and when you're done, if you want to use the reactions and give me a thumbs up, then I will know that you are done. And once you're done, if you're done, go to page 3 of the workbook and put the numbers in this graph in there. Dr. Lewis, when you're done, page 3, you can record your scores in there. I think I can see that Heather and Sophia and Lindsay are done. Amy and Angel, just let me know if you need more time or if you're ready to go. Angel's ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Okay, so your scores, you got them on there. You put them on page 3 of the workbook. And now let's figure out what this means. Okay, so the triangle stands for direct style. The diamond stands for spirited. The square is systematic, and the oval is considerate. So when we look at those two on the top in terms of communication style, that arrow that's in the middle there, direct and spirited people tell people things. Considerate and systematic people ask people things. And then there's low expressiveness, and you control emotions in the direct and the systematic, and you're more expressive and display emotion in the spirited and the considerate. Okay. I am going to show you my scores, which kind of contradict one another. Anything over 27 or over is a significant style that you have. And I have 28 on considerate, 24 on direct, which is kind of the opposite of the way things go. So I both display emotion and control emotion. So that's an interesting piece. And I told you that Nikki Whaley, my training partner, she's the exact opposite of me. She's systematic and spirited. So that's a good team, but definitely in the beginning of our working relationship, she's much more direct in terms of communication than I am. I'm more considerate in terms of the communication piece. So there were things to get used to. So let's talk a little bit about what this means. And I'm going to wait on sharing. We're going to come back to this slide. So the direct person, so that is the triangle, is assertive, forward thinking. The spirited person, that is the diamond, energetic and creative. Considerate is thoughtful and supportive, and systematic is consistent and well organized. So those are kind of some descriptors for those styles. So let me just look at my notes here. So the direct person is like the go-getter, right? They're the person who, is going to get it done. There's no questions about that. They're a big picture thinker, like to move a team forward. The spirited person is your cheerleader. They're the person who might be a little bit in that squirrels and shiny objects because they're always thinking of something new. It's like, oh, this is a good idea. Oh, wait, this is a good idea. So that's who that person is. But they really help a team get motivated and excited about projects. So the considerate team member is the caregiver. They're the person who is making sure that everyone has what they need. They're supportive of others and really tries to take care of the team's interpersonal relationships, tries to keep those relationships positive. And the systematic person is really well organized and comfortable with setting schedules, meeting deadlines, those kinds of things. So they can get stuff done. So that's who that person is. And now we'll go through some strengths and then some trouble spots for each of the different styles. So we talked about this, focus on the big picture. The direct person believes conflict can be constructive. So they're not a person who's going to shy away from conflict. They believe that conflict helps move people forward. And really talking about things helps that. They're not afraid to take risks, but they communicate pretty assertively. So you probably won't have to guess what this person is thinking. The spirited style, again, loves that new ideas, open to change, recognizes and praises the accomplishments of other people on the team, and has a lot of energy and enthusiasm. That's who this person is. The considerate style is actively listens to others, always willing to lend a hand when needed, encourages other people to share their ideas and feelings, and tries to be that mediator in the team if conflict exists. And then the systematic strengths are thinks critically and analytically, has strong organizational skills, expects very high standards of performance. So not a lot of patience for people who aren't pulling their weight, and pays attention to detail. That's a person who's going to be probably your editor, the person who's checking the numbers, who's making sure the grammar's correct, all those things. So here are the trouble spots for these places. Direct people can be overly critical, not really thinking a whole lot about what the receiver is feeling, and aggressive and impatient. Those are a couple of other characteristics. Now, obviously, these are meant to be guidelines. They're not meant to be like, this is who you are and you're no one else. That's not what this is. But it just gives you a sense of how you function on a team. The spirited can be distracted and undisciplined. That's squirrels and shiny objects. Sometimes struggles to meet deadlines. Behavior in a meeting sometimes can be like, okay, calm down. We're on a track. Let's keep going. And might have difficulty sticking to the plan. So this is the person who really wants to just go wherever their mind takes them. The considerate person doesn't express opinions, is passive and dependent, trusts too easily, and may be overly sensitive to things that happen in a team setting. Now, again, remember I said these are just guidelines because I am 100% sure anyone who knows me knows that I don't have a problem expressing my opinion. So there is, there's wiggle room in this. So let's, keep that in mind as we're going through it. And the trouble spots aren't obviously being pointed out to be a shaming mechanism. They're really being pointed out to show us where we have opportunities to improve our functioning on a team. So systematic trouble spots. It can be a perfectionist, often doesn't like changing a plan in the middle of it. You know, we agreed on this and we're going to keep going and this is what we're going to do. I always say this definitely is my husband. He has to have a plan every weekend. What are we doing this weekend? What are my chores I have to do? And don't change the plan, because I don't do well with that. Values data over personal relationships. This is a person who would rather look at numbers than go have coffee and talk about something, and can be rigid and inflexible. So those are some of the trouble spots for the systematic team member. And again, I want to just, I don't know, make sure that you understand that a team needs really all these people. There's no good functioning. Not everyone being direct is really not going to work on a team. Everyone being spirited isn't going to work on a team. So these roles are necessary in team functioning, because you use one another's strengths, and you find ways to allow their strengths to boost your strength. So the styles that we have been talking about are kind of preferred behaviors, within guidelines. And this team member roles are kind of the responsibilities that happen. Certain team member styles favor certain team member roles. So let's look at that. So the initiator gets the discussion started. They're the person who addresses difficult issues. That's the person who is going to take control. They're going to make sure you're going in the direction you need to be going. The coordinator is someone who organizes people and projects. The evaluator, it asks the questions and measures progress. The completer follows through on details. So if you're a direct person, you are in these roles, in these task roles, you're an initiator and an evaluator. If you're systematic, you're the coordinator and the completer. And then there are maintenance roles in teams as well. And that's what we'll talk about next. So you want to get people involved. The gatekeeper is that person who gets everyone going. The harmonizer mediates that conflict. And so the considerate style is the gatekeeper and the harmonizer. The energizer is the person who keeps things going, motivation high, spirits high, and they're also the encourager, who recognizes and praises good performance. So that's someone who's spirited. Those are their styles. So the next question is, what is your style? So I've shown you my style. Does anyone else want to share their style?
I can go first. So mine's like really weird. I got my highest, I have two, but they're only a point away from each other. So my highest one was considerate with a 27, but right below it was a 26 that's direct. Mm-hmm. So I'm a considerate direct person. And I got super low scores on spirited and systematic, but there was only 1 point difference too. It was an 18 and 19. So I go considerate, direct, systematic, and then spirited is my last one.
Mm-hmm. So that's a very balanced profile. You can see that, right? And if you want to keep track, you could use this to kind of just put initials by it of the people on your team, so you can have an understanding of where they're at and what their styles are. Who wants to go next? Amy.
I'll go. So Systematic was 26, considerate was 24, and direct is 23, and then spirited is 17.
Okay. So anything 17 or above, anything below 17 is something that it's really not your style. Like it's just not in your repertoire. If it's above the 27, then it is a significant style that you have. It's 27 or above. So, so Sophia was direct and considerate. And you were, what were your top two? Systematic?
Systematic and considerate.
And considerate. Okay, good. Who's next?
I came with 19 on direct, 23 on spirited, 33 on considerate, and 15 on systematic. So that's me. I think that's me.
That doesn't surprise, that result doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
There
it is.
So spirited and considerate are your top two.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So now you have three people who have a considerate style, which is interesting because sometimes the considerate person doesn't always say what they're thinking, or if their feelings are hurt, it's going to come out in a different way. So that's something to think about as we keep going. Lindsay, I saw you were unmuted there for a minute.
Yes. I know Zoom is so, just going back to wanting to be in person. I feel like there's less tug and pull. You can tell when someone's about to speak in person. I had systematic 29 and considerate 25, and the other two were 18.
Okay, great.
So very systematic.
So-
My note-taking skills are proof of that.
Heather.
I have considerate as 29 and systematic as 27, and then spirited very low at 13, and direct at 21.
Okay, great. Dr. Lewis.
Okay, let me flip my page here a second. I was split 26-26 on spirited and direct. And then I was 22 on considerate, and then 16 on systematic.
Okay, there you go. And Hilda, did you participate in this?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great.
And so mine were all just like one. So I had 24 on direct, 23 on spirited, 22 on considerate, and 21 on systematic.
Wow.
Wow, talk about balanced. What was your systematic?
21. So it was 21, 22, 23, 24.
Interesting. That's a good thing because Dr. Lewis is not as systematic, so she needs someone who's more systematic. So that's good. So any surprises in this? What are your thoughts? Did anything strike you like, oh, I would have thought I was this? And I can share that I would think, just like my initial thought when I first took this was I was going to be systematic because I'm a list maker. I'm a task doer, but that was not the highest. So that was a little surprising to me because I am definitely not a person who wings it very often.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too to like when you look at the strengths and weaknesses of them, because I was not surprised by systematic being my top. And it's not that I don't consider myself to have the strengths of considerate, but like when you look at the weakness, it like I express kind of what you were saying. I express my opinion, and I'm not overly sensitive. So it was surprising to have that as second. I would have expected more spirited or direct to be second for me.
I'm not surprised about considerate, because I often get like the mom title, even with my friends. You know, I'm like, okay, we got to keep going. You got to do this, got to do that. Do you have your purse? Do you have your keys? You know, so that is kind of my MO. But you're right. Like the weaknesses or the trouble spots, you're like, well, it's not really a trouble spot for me. Although maybe it is, and I just can't see it as much. Anybody else?
So with my results, I'm not surprised at all. I think it's pretty pinpoint, but what I did notice is that out of all of us had considered as a top strength, like all of us as board members, you know, Lindsay, Angel, Amy, Heather, and myself had that as a top 2. And I think if I was correct, a lot of us had a pretty high score in that area. So yeah. I think that's a very good thing, I guess you can say, to start off with, especially since a lot of us don't know each other, that we all at least have that compassion for each other as, you know, we move along.
Right. And I'd like to think that that considerate is a little bit around empathy too, you know, your ability to kind of connect with people and understand perspectives. So that's powerful. Again, the trouble spot with that is, do you say exactly what you mean when you want to say it? So that's the other, you know, obviously this is a seesaw. So you're going to, you know, figure out where that balance is.
I think building off of Sophia's reflection, like I think it is impressive that all of us have the considerate, but then when you look at the other 3, it's very evenly distributed. So I think that can kind of help offset any struggles with all having considerate, is that in all of those other areas, there's 3 of us in each one.
Mm-hmm. And I think Angel had the highest spirited, right? So he's going to be your motivational person. He's going to be the person who gets you excited about something, which, I mean, all you have to do is talk to him once and you're going to understand that's who he is. So that's a really positive thing to have on the team. Heather, anything, or Angel, anything for either of you that kind of jumped out?
Well, before I started, I thought I'd be more direct, which is still a 21. But and I knew I wasn't spirited. I'm just not like that. So that wasn't a shocker.
Yeah. But I want to know, how did you get that like cool background all of a sudden?
Oh, it's actually on a stand, and I have it for my kids because like the Zoom backgrounds don't work really well because like they cut out, they're like weird. So yeah. I have that for my kids so they're not paying attention to what's on the wall behind me. So when my wife like walked through, she like pushed it up for me. So
that's nice. I like that.
Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Hilda, Angel, Donna, anything you want to add to that?
Listening and learning is interesting. The numbers and the personalities, but I see potential. I think we can do this. Everybody's different, but gosh, I like it. It will be very boring if everybody was the same.
It would be very boring.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Spoken like a true cheerleader, a true spirited cheerleader.
Exactly. Exactly. So obviously the purpose of this was just to get you thinking about how you fit in this team. And you're a brand new team, because when you have brand new board members, the whole team, everything shifts as it should. And so working together, this gives you a better idea of how you communicate with one another, what it is that you may be more focused on than someone else because of your style. So I think there's value in just understanding where everyone comes from, and being in a sense of, okay, this is my role right now. And how can I help the team in this issue that we're dealing with? So, okay. If there's nothing else on team member style, and I would encourage you to kind of read through your workbook and take a look at some of the things that are in here, because I think they're pretty illuminating. The difference between team roles and team styles on pages 8 and 9. I think that really gives you an understanding. And then pages 10 and 11, normally I would have you do this reflection and share. Because we were covering so much today, this is a little bit of an abbreviated, but I would encourage you to do that individual reflection. And then the final page is the team reflection. Who are we as a team? What components do we have? What's strong? What might I need to help the team be better at? So I would really encourage you to go through the workbook, take a look at that. You could even use that in a future study session or a retreat of some sort in the future if you wanted to, since you have your scores and you know where you are. So you could build some activities around that. So we are about almost 2 hours in. And so I think now would be a good time to take a break. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. So it's 10:13. How about we get back here at 10:20 and be ready to go? Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
took my dog out and it is not warming up out there. It's chilly today.
I love it, but
I'm just waiting for the rain that they've been predicting for days. It keeps getting pushed back.
I know. Okay, is everybody all set? I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So it is exactly 10:20. So thank you for being punctual. And let's get started on some of the policy conversation that I thought we could have. And this is where it's great that you have Jennifer here, so she can help us if we need help. So what are board policies? They're the law of the land for school districts and the rules under which the district operates, including the governing board. So where does policy come from? You utilize ASBA's model policy service called Policy Bridge. And so our model policies are compliance-based policies. So they are based on various laws and regulations. And once you adopt those policies, they're your policies. They're not ours anymore. They're yours. You can alter language to fit your community. Any changes that are made should be reviewed by your legal counsel, just so that you make sure you are still within compliance with the law. And then again, once you adopt it, it's yours, regardless of who provided the language. So I picked out a number of policies that I just thought we could quickly go over. Just so you know that they're there, that they apply. The B section of the policy manual is the board section of the policy manual. So that is one section that I think it is great for all board members to have a really good understanding of, because that's what those are the laws that pertain to you. And so we'll talk about a bunch of B policies, but then also talk about some of the K policies, and that in terms of public concerns and complaints, because that is something that is going to happen to you. You will get people talking to you. So especially new board members, whether you know it or not, you kind of have a target on your back, because they're going to want to tell you things, parents, staff, community members. So let's keep on moving here. So this is BBA. This is the powers and responsibilities of the board. I'm just going to give you a second to kind of read through this, see if there are any questions on it. Any thoughts, questions?
I have a quick question.
Yep.
So is this just ours, or is this like what everybody has as part of theirs?
Well, it's probably similar to what very many school districts have.
Okay.
Is that what you would say, Jennifer?
Yeah, if you don't mind if I chime in.
Yeah, please.
So ASBA has what they call copyrighted policies that are what they recommend. And then as a school board, you can choose to change it or not. And Julie's correct, you should have legal counsel review. But for the most part, ASBA has its own legal counsel, Chris Thomas, and he reviews the policies to make sure they're compliant. So if you're adopting ASBA's general copyrighted policy, it's usually very much the same as almost every other school district. I don't see a lot of changes being made to the Section B policies, but school districts do personalize and adopt as they see fit. So,
Right, thank you.
so this policy that you're looking at is standard, I would say, in most districts.
And the way that you can tell if your policy has been altered in any way is if it is not significantly, but in some ways different than what the copyrighted policy is, the model policy. If you go to your policy manual, the copyright won't be next to the letters that identify it. So if you go to a policy and there's no copyright, that means you've altered it. It's still in compliance. You've just altered it for whatever reason. And there are numerous reasons that you might do that. My school district has a lot of policies that are not copyrighted because we have certain, we believe we have a certain culture that we want to reflect in policy. So a lot of the policies have been just changed. Not that the baseline is any different. It's just a lot more words than what the model policy would have in it. Yes, Jennifer.
Do all the board members know how to access policy through the ASBA's policy bridge to get to Creighton's policy? If not, Hilda can show you how to do that, or you can always ask Hilda. Good, I'm glad.
And they do have a copy of these policies, the actual copy that will have the copyright up on top.
Yep. See what I mean? You always need Hilda around. Yeah, so you'll see in the paper copies that you have, whether it's copyrighted or not. Okay. This is board powers and responsibilities, BBA. So this is just the information that, these are your obligations. So give you a kind of a second to read through those as well. So some of the things that I want to mention in BBA is, there is no real recourse in Arizona for board members behaving badly, let's say, other than recall and frank conversation at a public meeting. There's really nothing else that can be done. Board members can be removed because of open meeting law violation, but I don't know if that's ever been done in Arizona, maybe once. Okay, one time. So, if there's disharmony on the board, if there are issues on the board, the way you have to deal with it is talking about it. And it's really like you would do as part of a family. So that's just something to think about as we keep going. And we'll have some opportunity, I think, to have a conversation when we get to the communication protocols about some of the ways that you communicate and how you can better communicate. So if it's okay with you guys, I think we'll just keep going and we'll look at that communication piece a little bit later. This is BBAA. Again, defining what a meeting is. And a quorum and legal action. So this is an important piece as well. And I think one of the things that is extremely difficult when you become a board member is understanding open meeting law and adhering to it. because you are used to a certain way of communicating. And if you know each other and you're friendly outside of the board, it is hard to not talk about board business, but that's really what you have to do, is not talk about board business. So having the kinds of kind of limitations that you have with open meeting law can be challenging. And I was a really involved parent in the school district before I became a board member, and I had to totally shift the way I communicated. And it was hard. But the reason is that the business of the board should be done in public. That is the way the law tells us it has to be done. And so these are the things that we have to do to stay in compliance. Any questions on that?
So I also have maybe a question on this too.
Okay, please.
When board members have issues with each other and maybe those things aren't being addressed appropriately through communication with each other, but maybe you don't want to bring it like to a meeting, like an open meeting, but you do want to address it. Like, how should you go about doing that?
Well, I think there's a number of things that you can do. I think you, so I'm going to tell a story of my own experience with a board member. She called me one day and she said, "Can I come by your house?" This was years ago. And I said, "Sure." And I'm thinking, why is she coming? Why does she want to come by my house? And she was very upset with me for something that I said at a meeting the night before. And came in and told me that I was rude to her, that what I said was very hurtful. And my intention with what I said was to be a joke. We were in a study session. We were talking about things. And I made a comment like, "We just talked about that. That's not your job," or something like that. She was very upset and came to my house and said, "I didn't like what you did." And I have to tell you, that was one of the best leadership lessons for me, because she told me what she was feeling. And we are people who don't agree on almost everything. But we have a decent relationship because she took that step, because she came to me and said, "I have a problem with this. We need to talk it through." And she ended up spending, 2.5 hours at my house. Not something I probably would have done socially with her ever, but we talked about kids, and we talked about family, and we talked about travel, and we talked about our experiences as students and being in school, and just got different perspectives from each other. And so I think for me, that would be the best way to do it, is to really have just a direct one-on-one conversation with someone if you're not feeling comfortable with with an interaction. I think the other thing that can happen is, if you feel comfortable with it, you can ask the superintendent to kind of mediate that piece. That might not work. You can't obviously bring another board member into it, because then you would have a quorum and you would not be able to have that conversation. So it is challenging. And I think the one-on-one communication is probably the best way to address it, particularly if you don't want to bring it up in a public meeting. So there's value. There could be value in bringing up at a public meeting. But I think that's just something that you as a board member, or any board member, would have to weigh. What is the cost of this and what's the benefit of it? And how is it going to help the team, or how is it going to hurt the team? So I just think there's there's a lot of kind of personal determinations you're going to have to make about that.
Will we have that space to do that today?
If it is needed, yes, we can do that.
Okay. Because I think it is needed.
Okay.
I kind of wanted to maybe talk about it during our team member style.
Okay.
But I guess there's some stuff that needs to come out, and I think we need to get through this before we can be open-minded to other people and what they're saying, because I think there's some feelings going on, and I know it's keeping me from maybe being the best board member I can be at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
do we need to stop here and have the conversation?
I would like to.
Yeah.
I don't know if other people would like to, but I would appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I'm down for that.
I see Sophia, thumbs up. Lindsay. Okay.
I'm open to it.
Okay, great. So we're gonna put policy. We're gonna do that later.
On hold. Yeah.
So a couple of things before we start kind of in this conversation. I'd really like to keep the statements to I statements. So you want to make sure that there's not blame and shame, but that we're coming together for growth and unity. And one of the things that I heard when I talked to each of you this week ahead of this training was the desire for harmony. Almost every single person said that to me. And I think that's critically important for you all to remember, that desire for harmony exists individually. So collectively, I think you can make it happen. So who would like to start?
Well, since I brought it up, I will totally start.
Okay.
So because we can't talk to other board members and there was things said about board members, I think it's important that they kind of know, because I don't believe in secrets. I mean, if you tell me something that you want me to keep private, I will keep it to my grave. But there was some conversations before the new board members, the three of us were, had our ASBA training, and before we were certified and things like that. We were talking a lot because the three of us ran together. So I think with Sophia and Lindsay and I running together, there may have been perceived that just because we ran together that we were like a band of three people coming in that would always vote the same or would always be against other people just because it was the three of us. And yes, we did become really good friends. It's been really hard for us to separate, and we have separated. Like, I have not talked to the ladies since, before the new year. And it's been really hard, other than just saying something on Facebook, like Sophia, I told her I missed her daughter the other day because, I was seeing her kids like all the time when we were together. So there was some discussion before all of that. And then when we actually had the board meeting, there was some decisions made, and I struggled with some decisions about who I wanted to be board president, and my decision had changed over a period of time. I wanted to let Amy know that I had changed my mind and why I changed my mind, but because I'm a new board member, I didn't really know if I would break this open meeting law. Like, that's scary to me, because I still don't know the whole protocol of it, and so just not saying anything was better than saying something. So I know that I hurt Amy's feelings, and she did send me an email that to me, I prefer to have direct conversations with people than to be passive aggressive, because I am a more direct person and I would like to solve problems that way. So just so everybody on the board knows that you can always call and talk to me if you do have a problem with me, and we can talk constructively. But, basically she called me a liar, and she said, is this the way the three of us think about how we build trust? And so I want to bring that out because that's not the way the three of us want to work. And that's not the way that we want to come into this relationship. And I can understand why she felt that way. And I want to get this out in the open because I don't hold the animosity towards her. I have come into this with new eyes as to what I've seen, like in previous board meetings. I want to like build that relationship from new and not previous, like things that people have said to me or anything like that. And I don't want her to feel that it's us against her. And I am a truthful and so I guess that hurt my feelings, but I also feel that when people threaten me in a way, because it was also said that a lot of people reached out to her feeling like opening meeting law was broken. And I don't feel like that was broken, but I also want the other ladies to know that that was said and they were included in that conversation because I didn't want it to be a secret. And so Amy, I apologize, you know, for our conversations. I had hoped that maybe I tried really hard in my speech to tell you kind of why I had changed my mind. And I'm sorry that, you know, you shut down from that. But I just want you to know that if you want to call and talk to me, I'm completely open to that, to talk in a respectful manner. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from, because I don't want this to be, I don't want to shut down because someone is angry with me. I don't mind that people are angry with me, but I'm also a fixer. My family knows that I'm the fixer. I'm the oldest in the family. So like if there's tension in like our family, I'm the fixer. Like, for example, my dad just passed away and we have to deal with his wife right now. And nothing's being done about a funeral or a will. And so like my brother and sister called me and said, can you please call her? Because we're not really close to my dad's wife, even though they've been married for 16 years. So I just see my role as a fixer. And so that's what I'm trying to do right now is fix this and try to make it okay and let everybody know like what's going on. So that's kind of my piece.
So I thank you for the explanation, Heather. I'm very sorry to hear about your dad. I did not know that he had just passed away. Yeah, I am very angry and I have been since the board meeting. I reached out to the 3 new board members prior to them being sworn in just to say, hey, congratulations. It is my strong desire to work together as a team and be a unified board. I meant that with all of my heart and spoke with each lady individually. And I wasn't looking for anyone to say, would you like to be president? I really just want to say, look, we have to work together. And Heather said, well, I would like to nominate you for president. What do you think about that? I wasn't expecting that. You know, I felt that I could do a good job with that and that I would give all board members a voice because I know how it feels for 6 years to feel like you are in the minority. So I thought we had a really good conversation about that. So yeah, it was a big surprise to me. I felt like I had been lied to. That's why I said, you lied to me. I think I was pretty direct about that. And you said, I thought you would understand why I changed my mind. And I said, I do not understand. And that was the end of the conversation. Yes, there is a perception that open meeting law was violated. We should know that. We need to know that. That is what our staff members think and community members think. Either Dr. Lewis being involved or Jeannie Castine being involved. She's tagging the 3 of you on Facebook about what other boards in the Valley are doing. I would like, while Jennifer's here, if she could kind of talk about serial communication and how that's an open meeting law violation, because I don't think people really understand it. It's a very nuanced thing. And I don't think staff understands it, or many people do. And there is a concern that open meeting law was violated. So I think that's important that we know that because that affects the board as a whole. And yeah, so I feel like my trust was broken. Trust is earned. It's hard to re-earn it. I mean, I'm shaking. I'm so mad right now still. It felt like such a betrayal. So, you know, I'm hurt. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for Angel for being interrupted. And I said, Angel, thank you very much for nominating me. I appreciate that. And I innocently, naively, I don't know, he said, well, they obviously, you know, figured out what they wanted to do already, which is also appears like an open meeting law violation. So I appreciate the opportunity for talking about this right now, because this has to be done, or this is how you get a dysfunctional board. These things have to be talked about. So I wasn't seeing space for it. So I've been, you know, the considerate board member and not expressing my opinion because I didn't see space for it. So I appreciate you bringing it up, Heather. And, you know, it's for me, it's going to just take time for me to get over it. I don't care about being president. That's a lot less work for me now. So, you know, that's fine. But I'm hurt and I'm angry. And it's just going to take time for me to get over it. So thank you for bringing it up.
I thank you, both of you, for being brave enough to talk about this at this time in a meeting. I think there are a couple of things. One, that are things we can talk about that are not related to the feelings, but related to the process. Because I think the board president election is one of the most awkward, difficult things that happen in a board. And so ASBA has some thoughts on best practices in terms of selecting a board president. So the place for that isn't here, but I do want to put that in kind of a parking lot so we can talk about that a little bit, because I think so much emotional angst happens at that organizational meeting that people just don't talk about. So I think having more open communication about board presidency before you get to that point is the best thing to do. So we'll put that away and do that little parking lot piece. And before Jennifer talks about open meeting law, I think I'd just like to see where everyone else is and from an emotional perspective. And
yeah,
then
I like to speak. I remember in my expectations, I said, if somebody nominates me, I'll go for it. I'll do it. And then, but I will nominate Amy for the simple reason that she's been there, she has experience, and I thought it was a good idea. And then at the time of the vote, and even though I nominated her, but I have no problem with anybody being. So what happened later, when my friend Amy texted me to say thank you, not only it's like, as a preacher, I don't like to take a Bible verse out of context, because it gives a different perspective of the whole concept, the whole idea. So what I mentioned to Amy was, I think I failed to communicate and try to connect with at least one of the members, because I talked to no one. I said nothing to nobody, and I said, and I think they did the homework. I think somehow, not necessarily violating. I will not intend to or pretend to say that, because that if somebody is doing that intentionally, that's an accusation. So no, what I said is, I failed to contact them, to communicate, to build bridges with the new members. And the reason why I nominated Amy is because I know her. I know how she works. I know how she rolls. And I believe that if she had been the president, she would have done a great job. But at the same time, if the majority was voting the other way, I have no problem with voting that way. But I just want you all to know it's not my intention ever for defamation against anybody. I'm not saying in any way that anybody indeed violated open meeting law. What I said was I failed to connect. I failed to build bridges. And so at the time of bringing a vote, it was only me, myself, and I. I didn't even talk to Amy. Amy didn't know that I was going to nominate her. It was just me and my thoughts. And so just with all respect, I look forward to seeing you develop as the president, Lindsay, and then as the clerk, and then the rest of us being able to overcome feelings, because if a feeling, in my perspective, I don't feel bad at all. I feel bad about hurting somebody else, but I don't feel hurt. So I just want you guys to know that I have big expectations. I hope that we can keep on rolling together and these feelings can ease down. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thanks, Angel, for sharing. Lindsay?
First, I really appreciate everyone being honest. I, as well, going into this, yes, ran a slate with 2 other people, but never kind of intended for it to be a 3 versus 2 or anything like that. My purpose in running for the board was to be a part of a harmonious board. I love Creighton. I worked in Creighton, and I'm kind of like Angel. I'm like, if somebody nominates me, I'm going to go for it. But I personally, even going into the meeting, like right before the meeting, was still undecided about who I would vote for, if I would nominate anyone, because I see strengths in all 5 people here. So I just wanted to share that. And that's my perspective. I was surprised when Heather nominated me. So, and as Julie said, we know like those meetings are awkward. And I think there are a lot of feelings and that happen in them. And I think, I would have been fine with any one of us being president. I don't see it as a, hierarchy. It's an organizational piece, but I am committing, I'm here now, we're here now, and I'm committing that everybody will have a voice. I agree with Amy. That is incredibly important to me. I've seen too many board meetings where there's members that simply are not allowed to speak. And I think that doesn't get anybody anywhere. And, we are 5 equal members, as we talked about earlier. We are one body. And so I appreciate, that these things are being brought up and out in the open, because what I don't want to see is I don't want resentment building. If one of us has any issues with another, give me a call, talk to me, I'm not a fan of drama. I'm not a fan of, holding resentments or anything like that. And I truly do want all 5 of us to be a team, a unified team. We all have an equal voice. So that's my vision moving forward. And yeah.
Thanks, Lindsay.
So I'll just say this. I think it's yes, us 3 ran a slate, and honestly, we did get very close through our campaign. It was really hard for me and Lindsay, especially, not being able. So here's the thing. I don't want people to think that just because we ran a slate and we got super close, this preconceived concept of open meeting laws is super unfair. And it's not okay that people are assuming just because we were close. It was really hard for Lindsay and I to not even be able to be with Heather through the passing of his father. And I'm just speaking from the heart now. We didn't even go to that step for our friend, because she did become a friend. She was really close with my kids. Lindsay was too. It just goes deeper than that. And we really, after we started realizing what open meeting law was and what it looks to the outer, spectrum, to other people, we started taking that seriously. We haven't even really texted each other or done anything. And for me, as a person who cares deeply about my friends, not that I don't care about you guys, but it was just a deeper connection because we spent so much time together. It was really hard for me to not be able to do that. So having preconceived opinions or thoughts is unfair for all of us too. And going into a new board and going into a new place, having those thoughts already is not gonna harmoniously work. I just hope that gets squashed right now, and it's not a ongoing thought, because that's not how it is. I think we all ran a race. The community spoke in multitudes as well, and that was one of the biggest determinants that I decided of who I was going to vote for, not because of the relationship that I had with Lindsay before this, but because of the voter turnout too. I was put in a spot, in a position too, where I feel the community's voice is more important, and not the loudest voice are the ones that make the difference overall. So I don't want that to be anybody's thoughts here on the board or outside. If any staff, teachers, or anything, and this whole bringing, Dr. Lewis in, like, that's not even anything, some of us do have a personal relationship with Jeannie, and the fact that she's still getting brought up, it's like irrelevant, and Amy did bring a good point though, because I know that she did tag us in something. So I don't think any of us responded to it. And we did see what was going on in another school board. I just don't know legally how that works, if that's okay, if it's not okay, if we're allowed to respond. I guess we are all learning in that aspect, but I want us to literally all work together and not have that preconceived image of us, because it's going to be a roadblock as it is, and we're not going to be able to work together that way if that's how we're going to be starting this school board, or initiating that way, like, oh, they ran a slate, so automatically they're all going to be the same. No, we're all different individuals. We have our own opinions, and it's unfair that people think of that of us already. That's all I have.
I did have that was going to be my question was, we were tagged on Facebook. None of us responded. It made me uncomfortable to be tagged with the other two. So I would like clarification on that. I was planning on reaching out to Jeannie and asking that she make sure that she's not doing that. I do know in the comment she tagged us, and then she immediately wrote, nobody respond. But it was still very uncomfortable, even though none of us initiated it. So I would like some guidance or advice, Julie or Jennifer, on those pieces. Because it put us in an awkward position that I did not want to be in. I didn't ask to be tagged,
Well, and it's not the last time it'll happen, because someone else might tag you all. So that is going to happen, and that's something I think we should talk about. I just kind of want to see if there is a way to kind of wrap this up a little bit. I think one of the things, as an outsider, I think the 3 new members, you're going to have to work really hard to not seem like you're operating as a team, because when you run on a slate, you run as a team. So when you are elected, then you're going to have to really work hard to differentiate yourselves individually as board members. So that's just something, that's food for thought. It's not wrong. It's not right. It just is. And so I think that's just something to think about. And I think for Amy and Angel, they're veteran board members, and they have a certain level of understanding that could be really helpful to new board members. And so I think to utilize that expertise will be really important as you work together as a team. Relying on the people who have experience, I think will really help build a team ethic in terms of working together. So the first thing is, this is incredibly brave for all of you to have done. And so I commend you for that, because it demonstrates your willingness to work together. And there will be time is going to be needed to heal. But if the information is out there, we've laid it all out and we're ready to work together and try to build the team, I think you have taken an incredibly brave and exciting step in the right direction. So I guess my question is, do we feel like we can move forward? Is there more that we need to talk about? And I'm just going to let you tell me.
Might I suggest Jennifer chime in with serial open meeting law
Sure.
possibility? Okay.
Sure.
Can I just make one comment? I just want to reiterate that for me, it's going to take time. Sophia, I know you'd like to quash it today, but that's not how it works for humans. I mean, I'm angry, so it's going to take me some time. And Jeannie Cassadine, of all people, should know better. So I don't know. There's a mistrust there. She was on for the board vote for 5 minutes to watch the board vote, and then she went off. So the appearance, of people working together is definitely out there. So, damage has been done and it will take time to repair it. But I think this is a first step to that. So thank you.
Yeah. And obviously you don't take care of conflict in a conversation. And that's when we were talking about that relationship capital, really trying to focus on building the relationship with each individual person. Not talking, again, not board business, not school district stuff, just who am I? Who are you? How can we work together? So I think those are the kinds of conversations that are going to need to happen going forward. And I think there are some processes that we can put in place that will help foster that as the team moves ahead. So again, thanks to all of you, and the grace that you can give one another in this healing process will be really valuable.
So I'd like to echo Julie's thoughts on commending all of you for having a very respectful and open conversation about actions that you took as a board and that you received or did individually, not in your role as board members. Very respectful, and I'm happy to see it. It's a difference in other board sessions that I've attended for both Creighton and certainly for other clients. Let me just give you a little bit of pieces on the open meeting law, and I'm going to use what happened with your board election as the example because that's the real life case. If there is a decision made outside of an open meeting or conversation made outside of an open meeting, if the board policy is up and it reflects the legal decision or the legal definition, which is discussion, proposing a legal action or taking a legal action. If those conversations occur outside of an open meeting with 3 board members, that's the violation of the open meeting law. The Attorney General's office has said that they have a lot of euphemisms for it, having a daisy chain, having the telephone game, having serial communications. So I talk to Donna talks to Susan Lugo, and Susan Lugo talks to Jay Mann. Now 4 of us have the same piece of information. I tell Donna I'm going to vote for Jay. Donna tells that to Susan. Susan tells that to Jay. And now 4 of us know how we're voting. That's what is not permitted under the open meeting law in terms of a daisy chain or serial communications. You can't avoid the fact that it's not 3 of you in a room or in a chat room or, together speaking about it. So that's what that is. I want to really also commend both the new board members and the existing board members in your discussion today. I heard a lot of, I didn't do this because I'm concerned about the open meeting law. Angel said he didn't telegraph his vote. Heather said she didn't telegraph that she changed her mind. Sophia indicated that she's being very cautious about the social relationships. So did Lindsay. Those are great things to do because of the appearance of an open meeting law violation, which is, I think, frankly, what you're dealing with here. You're dealing with the fact that it came in as a block and one of you was elected to the board president role that wasn't on the board before. And so there's an appearance that that decision was made outside of an open meeting. Similarly, being, linked in a social media manner is an appearance issue more than a violation of the open meeting law issue. It looks like you're linked. It looks like you're voting at a block, and that's problematic from a governance standpoint. When it gets to be problematic legally is if you're using your social media to communicate about actions that you intend to take as a board member. Or if you're communicating through social media rather than through a board meeting. So I'm sure you all are friends on your various social media sites, friends meaning connected, linked, that's fine. If you are posting about something that's important to you and another board member comments saying, I support that, that's not going to be a violation of the open meeting law. But if you're in a Facebook private chat, or you're using your Snapchat feature to communicate with each other, or you go to WhatsApp or now Signal because you think those conversations are going to be private, and you're communicating with 3 or more of you, those are violations of the open meeting law. So that's kind of the difference. You all getting tagged in a post, appropriate not to respond, because if you start responding and start having a conversation, it could lead into an allegation of an open meeting law. Whether it is or isn't is really going to depend on who's a part of that conversation, what it was about, whether it was true or not. So that gets messy, right? It gets very messy. I respect and I respect your caution. The 3 of you who have formed bonds outside the school board, those don't have to disappear because now you've been elected, but you do have to be cautious. If you are seeing each other in public and the 3 of you are out in public, or the 4 of you are out in public, that creates that appearance of impropriety. It's not necessarily wrong if you are not speaking about matters that are board related, but it's hard when that's the open meeting law is the antithesis to human communication, because it's what you have in common is that you serve on this body together and that you care about the school district. And so it's natural to talk about it. And the open meeting law doesn't allow you to do that in the way that is natural. And so I would just end with 2 thoughts. One is I want to express to Heather my extreme sorrow about hearing about the death of your father. I experienced that 13 years ago. It was devastating, and I'm really sorry. And the second piece I want to recommend to you, and this is not legal, this is just Jennifer, is I think Amy has hit the nail on the head with it's now a trust issue. There's a book that one of my school districts is using it as their overall use this year. And then another administrator recommended it to me. So just keep popping up. It's called The Speed of Trust. And it's a really good tool. It's written by Stephen Covey's son. And it's called The Speed of Trust. And it talks about how you have to build trust up over time, and it's chinking away. It's those, little things that will build. And I just feel very hopeful that that's going to happen. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. If you've got questions about the open meeting law issues, I'm right here.
Jennifer, can you just also we talked about this with Chris Thomas back in 2018. CEA will meet with board members. They like to meet with all board members. But for a time there, they would come with an agenda and we talk, and then it would always get to, okay, you guys, the length of the school day is too long. You need to change that, right? That was like for a couple years, that was the topic of conversation, which was something that was going to be on a board agenda. And from what I understood from Chris is you can't lobby board members in a serial manner that way. Even if it's different CEA members, if the CEA all comes back together and says, do we have the votes? That's a problem. But, I love hearing from teachers and staff about, what are their struggles, in general, and not something that's a board. So I think that's really important to still meet with teachers and staff CEA members or not, you know, it's very important to meet with them, but we have to be very careful as board members not to discuss something that could be on a board agenda. Is that correct?
So certainly Chris is correct that CEA can't be the hub in a wheel of communication that allows the votes to be tallied, nor can Donna, nor can I, you know, nor can Hilda. So if somebody is the hub in the wheels of the communication where they're asking each one of the five of you how you might feel on a matter, and then they're, you know, accumulating that information, and then they're spreading it out. Well, we're good to go. That is a violation of an open meeting law. And so the superintendents will also say, well, I'm not polling. I don't know how, but, you know, I'm not polling. And Donna's really careful about that. I've heard her be careful about that. So that said, it's not incorrect for CEA to come to you and say, this is our agenda, this is what we want. The real rub here is for you not to telegraph how you're going to vote, you know? And so if you don't give them any wiggle room, and they'll push you, Julie knows more about this than anyone probably, but, you know, they'll push you to say how you can, you know, throw your cards on the table. But if you hold them close to the chest and vote your heart at a board meeting, that's your safest bet. And again, you know, I really hear a lot of that caution. I know Angel has expressed his caution, you know, it's not that you don't carry into that board meeting your thoughts, your experience, the way that you operate. I've met all of you have the background of being in schools, teaching in schools, you know, affiliated to schools, kids in schools. So you've got all those things that you think about in terms of wanting to support your staff. So it's not like you don't support CEA if you don't tell them how you're going to vote on the school day. But if you wait till a board meeting, you're better off.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking about that, Amy. Because I feel the same. I want them to feel like they can come and share with us how they're feeling and how, I mean, that's the best way to get a feel for the staff morale and really what's going on, the boots on the ground. But I appreciate, Jennifer, the clarification, because I'm like, how do I do that interaction, you know, where I'm not violating anything, but I do want them to have a voice. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. Let me give one little more caution about that. They're going to bring you issues, personnel issues, student issues, you know, specific instances where they want you to intervene or they want to know how you can help. Some of those are going to rip your heart out. Amy has had this happen to her. So, you know, and you have to, as board members, that goes into the part that Julie started with, the overstep or the oversight. You have to be cautious about getting involved in those individual situations as individual board members, because it may at the back end come to your requirement to vote on it, whether it's terminating a teacher or expelling a kid, or, you know, it may come, those individual instances may come to you on the back end. And if you've gotten involved in the facts on the front end, that's harder for you. So that's last word of caution. I'm going to shut up and let Julie go do her show.
So I think, you know, there are a couple of issues in all of this, but I think one of the things that probably Amy and Angel have already developed is the explanation of your role as a board member. So when CEA comes to you, and they will, and many other people will as well. So having that 2 or 3 sentences that you say when they come to you about things. You know, I'm a member of a team. If we discuss anything that will come before the board in any detail, I'm not going to be able to vote on it. My job is the board is the last step in a concern or complaint process, not the first. So there's lots of ways that you can frame it so they understand your responsibility as a board member, but also you want to impart empathy because people were coming to you for a reason. And frankly, they're your constituent. I mean, they could have voted for you. So it is a very, very delicate balance. And it's hard to find that at first. So I would encourage you to use one another to help figure out what's the best way, to kind of do this. And both Angel and Amy have had experience with that. ASBA is always available to talk with you. If you have questions, all you have to do is call us and we'll get the right person to talk to you. So that's one thing that the newer members, and you will have a target on your back, right? People are going to come to you because they don't know if you know the rules yet. So that's just something to think about. The other thing about open meeting law is that employees can violate open meeting law and be fined. So that's just another nuance to this that I don't know that every board member understands. So it's not just board members who can get in trouble for open meeting law violation. It's also employees. So that's just something to think about as you're talking to people and looking at it. What is this going to do, and how do I respond so that I don't talk about what I'm going to vote, what my vote is going to be. And so I spend a lot of time listening and not so much talking when people come to me. It's more about, okay, I'm gonna listen to you, and I can give you, I can tell you what the process is, like the chain of command if you have a problem, but I can't solve your problem for you. And Heather, you said you're a fixer. I'm a problem solver. It was incredibly difficult when I first got on the board because I just wanted to solve problems. So it's going to be a challenge. And working with Donna, working with board members who are experienced and how to kind of deal with those issues will be really valuable.
Another factor we haven't talked about that I did want to talk about today is parents also will come to you sometimes, and they will sometimes email the whole board. And especially this just happened not on a scale in Paradise Valley like that. It cannot blow up, obviously, and become uncontrollable. And you can get thousands and thousands of emails. But in Creighton, we get a handful, like less than 10 when it's an issue. So I remember being a parent and having one board member reply back to me, Carl Zaragoza, and we have this incredible friendship ever since then. And I kind of he convinced me to run for the board. He was the only one that replied to me. I mean, I replied to several parents who were really angry about us going virtual. I talked to some of them on the phone, and they just wanted to talk to somebody and be responded to. They otherwise feel like they're being ignored. And I feel like that's our responsibility as board members to have a line of communication open. That helps parent engagement, which we really need to work on hard. So I think, you can still violate open meeting law if they're telling you need to vote to open the schools, and I'm going to talk to you until you change your mind, or they shouldn't know what, if we've made up our mind, and it's not something we voted on anyways. But I think that's another factor that you have to be careful of, but I also think it's important to listen to all of our stakeholders.
And my question about that, Amy, you might be able to answer this, is I know that they want to be listened to, but then how do you respond to them with not sharing like your opinion about how you feel about that, or also not sharing or saying something like, well, the rest of the board feels this way, but I feel this way, because I know we want to stay cohesive. So after listening to those people, like how is your response?
I mean, it can be as simple as thanks for, sharing your concerns. If you're just going to do it via email, thanks for the email, it can be as simple as that. But, when I've gotten further deep in it, it's like, okay, I appreciate this article that you're sharing with me, because there's a lot of validity to this, and I will share it with Dr. Lewis, or, I get your concerns, and, sometimes I'll just say, I agree with you on a lot of this, but I'm not going to be able to agree with you on everything. And, and I'm sorry that you are so upset. And I understand why you're upset. It's pretty simple,
Yeah. And I think Amy's right. The acknowledgement of a problem or a concern or something goes a long way when you're working with families and staff, frankly. So that's, I think, something that the 3 newer board members are going to have to, it's going to be a little bit of trial and error to figure it out. And maybe, utilizing Amy Angel and Dr. Lewis would be a good way, to kind of get feedback about some of your responses. I know when I first started as a board member, I would often just type out a response and copy and paste it into an email and send it to the superintendent and say, is this going to work? What's good, what's not? So, and it takes time, but you learn how to do it. And it's a delicate balance. I think it's one of the hardest things about being a board member is how do you find that balance between not getting into the operational issues that the district, but providing guidance and support and empathy to your constituency. So it is a very, it's a challenge. The other thing I wanted to say about trust, so trust is, it can be difficult to build. And I think sometimes as a person, I'm a trustworthy person. Everyone should know that I'm trustworthy, but not everyone does know that I'm trustworthy. So sometimes we have to be explicit about building trust before implicit trust can be built. So that is just about, being clear about how you're feeling, being clear about communication, being clear and communicating if there are issues like you've done today. So you're making a great start to that. And it will take time because you all don't know each other. And you're kind of stuck together. You didn't choose, all of you didn't choose to be together. And I always use this example. I love my sister-in-law, but I didn't choose my sister-in-law. My brother chose my sister-in-law. So I got to figure out how to get along with my sister-in-law if I want to have a relationship with my brother. And that's the same in a team. You didn't necessarily choose all to be together, but you are now. And the most important thing is the students in Creighton. That is always what the goal should be, the success of those students. So, and that's why these kinds of conversations are good, because hopefully now you can focus on what do we need to do to build a better experience for students and a better district and a better culture, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's transparency, whether it's engagement, whether it's academics in terms of just purely academics, social, emotional, there's so many things that it could be. But having this and having some sense of the start of resolution, I think it was really important. Anything else? Maybe you can do a book study with that book Jennifer recommended.
Julie, might we take a 4-minute break and then come back for what we can do in the last half hour with you? Is that all right?
That is good. We'll take a little break and we'll be back. Okay, are we all back and ready to go? Okay. So the many things that I was planning on doing, we're not going to get to. So I just want to take a temperature check. I'm thinking it might be better to go through the communication protocols than the policy information, just so the new board members have an idea of what these protocols look like. We probably won't get to being able to talk about if they need editing or if they need something different. We can, I don't want you to not say something, but we're not going to be able, I think, to get into long conversations about things, but we maybe should identify if there are ones that you think need changed or needed editing or revamped. We can identify what they are. I don't know that we're going to get to being able to talk about what that looks like, though. So does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So the communication protocols that Creighton developed in 2019, and then looks like they were reviewed in a study session in January 2020. So here we are, 2021, reviewing those again. So this is the introduction to those communication protocols. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for one another and attempt at all times to work together as a team in order to operate as advocates for our students, parents, and our district in alignment with governing board policy. Any issues with this for anyone?
I just wanted to start out by saying we were, like, I guess in 2019, this was provided as a draft to the board, but we never ever discussed it again as a board. And a lot of this is redundant with policy and possibly our board expectations. And the reason this was created in the first place was when Carla was elected, she just wanted to know how to reach our attorney. And then Kathy had the same question. And so we said, Jennifer recommended doing a communication protocol, which could include sending an email to Dr. Lewis or Hilda or the board president if we had a question for the attorney that we thought maybe didn't require an executive session. That is my recollection of this. And then all the other things were added that actually already exist in policy. So my goal was maybe we could just add that email portion into our policy, because this protocol kind of lives out by itself. And if you're a new board member, I don't think you would come on and say, can I see the communication protocol? Because how would they know it even exists? So it's better if it's in policy. And I think having email doesn't actually like make for additional conversation with the attorney. It I think simplifies it if it's not something we need to call an executive session for. This has been an issue for new board members for the past couple of years, just wanting to know basic things like, do we have to vote on this or that, So I don't know if, Donna, if you have a different feeling or recollection on that.
I feel like it does keep coming up over and over again. And I do feel like we've asked Jennifer at least 3 or 4 times for input, and it's always landed here. So I'm going to ask Jennifer to chime in, since you specifically brought up the attorney piece and our time is limited. But I do think it's important that all board members go through general communication protocol across the board. So while it is in policy, I think this is a synopsis of it. And it would be a great way to highlight the general protocol. It goes to parents and complaints and teachers and the things we started to talk about in a scenario earlier. And then I think oftentimes, Amy, you've brought up the attorney piece. I know we put it in the update twice this year. I know board members have gotten copies of that. So Jennifer, would you like to chime in? And Hilda, I know you'll take notes for us on Jennifer's advice on attorney protocol.
Sure. So first of all, I am the attorney for Creighton Elementary School District. That means I represent the governing board and the district. I do work for both the district administration, and I am also board counsel. That is not a conflict for me to be in that role. If there are certain elements in which it is a conflict ethically for me, and I can't represent both the administration and the board, not that you're separate entities, but For instance, if I help you in recommending a statement of charges for a staff member, I cannot then give the board advice because the board sits as a jury. So that's kind of a brief overview. I have a great working relationship with Donna Lewis. I do not represent her. I've known Susan Lugo for probably 20 years now. I don't represent Susan. So my goal and my job is to represent the board in the district. That said, and you all have legal services through the Arizona Risk Retention Trust, and I'm one of the assigned counsel that can work with you. Others can as well. If you have questions that are legal in nature, you have every right as board members to get the answers to your questions. If they're simple questions, ask Donna. She'll ask me, and my understanding is the protocol is to pass my answer on to the board as a whole.
Correct.
I think that process has been streamlined, and I hope that that's the information you're getting. If it's more complicated and you want to understand more, you ask for an exec session. I'm doing 2 next week on mandatory vaccines for teachers, So, I mean, if that's, you have the ability as board members to ask for agenda items, you ask for an executive session, and I will make myself available. So that's it in a very brief nutshell. So
Donna, it sounds like that you've developed some sort of protocol around the contact with the attorney.
Yes, and Amy is correct. It's just implementing the policy. The ASBA copyrighted a policy, which is that the attorney works through the board president and superintendent. And Jennifer, can you speak to why not separate or individual contacts? I know
Sure.
You've talked about this with us before.
Right. One main reason is to maintain the attorney-client privilege. So, we want the information I'm giving you is confidential in nature. So, I can't be a conduit for the open meeting law, so I can't be talking to multiple people. So that's one reason. The second is that the policy, I'm sure, was implemented for cost savings. You don't want everyone to be able to have access to the lawyer and charge it up. But, Lindsay does, as board president, can call me directly on issues. If I get a call from any board member, I immediately tell the superintendent unless I'm specifically instructed not to. So I always loop in the superintendent on any issue.
And I think the notion of it being a representation of the body of the board rather than an individual board member, you've addressed it one time with us when a conflict might occur with a board member with a differing opinion, and again, you're representing the body of the board.
I represent the body of the board. I represent when you sit as a whole. That's, so.
So do you have a written procedures for connecting with the attorney that is different from what you have in policy?
Hilda, I think what we wrote mirrors policy, and I'm not sure if what we put in the packet. I'm looking through it, and I'm trying to see if there's anything that stands out.
I thought it was a little different.
Yeah, it's mirroring policy BDG.
Yeah, it's a protocol. Yeah, it's in the last page of this.
The last page of the policy packet?
Yeah, what you provided.
In our yellow packet, I see it on the last page, and it's items 1, 2, 3 questions are to be emailed either to the superintendent or the board president, who will then forward them to the attorney. 2, once questions have been answered by the attorney, the following will occur. If questions are time sensitive, attorney's response will be forwarded to all board members when it's received. Otherwise, attorney responses will be added to the next board update. And C, if attorney's response is that she is unable to answer those questions in an email, then an executive session will be scheduled. And then 3, the district will not be responsible for fees that are accrued because of unauthorized individual board member consultation with private counsel. So that's the protocol associated with policy BDG. Jennifer, does that mirror the conversations we've had about it and how it should turn into the protocol we should use to not violate our own policy?
It does. And, it furthers your goals of making sure that the board as a whole is getting the same information, the same attorney-client opinion, and that it's cost savings. So.
So let me ask this question, Jennifer. Can something like that document live as a regulation or an exhibit to the policy instead of being strictly in policy?
It's a good question, Julie. And I think that it could, but I don't think that it needs to, So the communication protocols that Creighton developed were the suggestion, primarily as Amy identified, based on one board member who's no longer on the board, her concerns. And I don't think that there's a necessity for them to be codified in a regulation, even though you can change a regulation, just because it's really just about how you are implementing policy, not about what the policy is. It's not really clarifying the policy. It's just, these are the sort of nuts and bolts.
Donna, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, thank you. Angel needs to step out. We will miss you. Thank you for joining us this morning, Angel, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Angel. So I think what probably needs to happen with this is it seems like perhaps there needs to be a little bit more conversation among the board and how they want to handle this document that you've developed. Does it need to live in the policy manual and regulation or exhibit? Are you okay with, for example, putting it in the communication protocols? And frankly, your communication protocols shouldn't just be a one-off. Those protocols should be discussed in an open meeting by the whole board so that your public understands that you are not just winging it, that you're not just kind of doing whatever you feel like. That I think will go a long way also to buffering the open meeting law violation issue. So I would not recommend that these be kind of talked about today and then put on a shelf. I would bring it back to a meeting, a public meeting, referencing the work that we will do today as much as we can do. And I'm happy to come back and go through it again with all of you, if that's something you would be interested in. Because there are a lot of different components of these protocols. So one thing that I will put in the summary that I provide is that a recommendation that the board have a conversation about what they want to do with that procedural process for contacting the attorney. So that the steps, where does that going to live? Where is that going to be? Is it going to be in the communication protocols? Is it going to be in the policy manual? What's the will of the board when it comes to that?
It already exists as a future agenda item, I know, and it's been on there for a while. So I think that would be great. Just bring it to a meeting and talk about it. And one of the reasons this is important, two new board members have been asking for, how do I reach the attorney? I think it's a common thing, but also there have been times when I in my one-on-one with Dr. Lewis say, can you ask Jennifer about this? And then I follow up a week or two later and Dr. Lewis, you will say, she said no. And it's like, well, wasn't a yes or no question, and that was in one of the things, we were going back and forth on. I think I would like to have things in writing for myself so that communication isn't lost through, a mediator. So I think any info Jennifer shares should just be in writing so that we are as clear as we can be.
Yes, and when she's not comfortable with it in writing, we will have an executive session.
And that's happened, not often, but it does happen. And just if I could be heard on one other point, Julie, Chris Thomas, as the counsel for ASBA, is available to all board members. He gets a lot of calls fielding individual questions. He does a good job of trying to say, you need to talk to your board attorney. But he's a resource, and I'm not telling you not to go to him. Generally, he'll turn it around, or he'll call and give me a heads up that this question's been asked. So I'm not the be all end all of the legal world. I can, share opinions with my colleagues. I talk to Denise Britt every other day, practically, as we're trying to get through COVID, so certainly I don't have an ego about being second guessed or opinion chopping, but Chris will try to minimize that so that we're giving you, that valid, secure, solid legal advice. And there's a ton of information that you all have as available to you as members of the Arizona Risk Retention Trust. For instance, they've got a whole COVID section. So that information is available in public to you too. So.
Can I ask a really quick question as a new board member?
Yeah.
So just from my understanding, so policies are like all together, but then the one that's in here, this protocol would be like in a separate place. And so that's what Amy's saying, like I wouldn't know to go look at the protocol. I could see like the policies, but I couldn't see like the actual protocol unless I went looking somewhere else for it.
Correct.
It's really more of an administrative practice. And so
Okay.
I was just asked to clarify how we do updates, how we do executive sessions, how we do board meetings, how agendas are developed, how attorney access is made. What do you do with the chain of command? What do you do with parent complaints? It was sort of a summary of all of the different communications that you guys get hit with so that you have a sense of what's the short step for that, or how might I access that, or what should I do when? So it was my effort on the many questions of many communications just to summarize what the policy did to guide board members as a body on, what are the access points for communication. And we also have individual meetings. So if you want to kind of dig into, so it's not just the answer no, but we go, here's the messy part of no. And here's what Jennifer explained to me. I can do it there with you when we have a conversation. And then we decide if we want to make it an agenda item or not.
Are there other protocols like together that I wouldn't know about, like as a new board member, or is this the only one? So
Yes.
where is it actually located? If I didn't have it, where would it be located? I guess.
Well,
Where would I find it?
You do have it. And
yes, I do.
Yeah. So the protocol that we wrote in 2019, and Amy is correct, it was presented in a board study session. But I think Julie is correct in hearing Amy's desire to continue talking about it. It kind of goes with the board expectations. Board expectations is not a policy. It's a how do we want to work together? And so, board expectations, the board at the time, I think it was 2017, last we updated it, was put on the website. And so the communication protocol draft that we presented in 19 and 20 was to answer a question that a board member had.
Okay, thank you.
And really, I would just say that those kinds of documents that exist should really be part of new board member onboarding, so that when you have a new member and you're going to be onboarding for a long time. So there will be things that you find out exist that you might not remember or might be kind of secondary, because there is so much to learn when you become a new board member. So we at ASBA believe these protocols really help boards assume the role that they need to assume and know, how am I going to be communicated to? What are the expectations? So, and we can start going through them, and get as far as we can, and then go from there and decide how we want to move forward after that. But I think we already know that document that addresses the steps in terms of getting in touch with the attorney is something that either needs to be added to this set of protocols or somewhere else. So that'll be a recommendation for future action by this board.
And I've got that on a future agenda item. May I ask one question about policy while Jennifer is here before we lose her? So BDF, advisory committees. This is something that's been on my mind for a couple of months. We have not had a board advisory committee since I've been on the board, but prior to that, I know there was a couple board advisory committees, and this is something I'd like to see us do because of just some of the issues I feel like we had with the budget committees, and me being told by a couple of people on the budget committees that, that's not really what happened in the committee meeting. The board is getting a different story. Because budget it's one of the 3 things that we are required by law to do. It's really important that those decisions are transparent for me as a board member to know. And so one of the hurdles of these budget advisory committees is that you have to follow open meeting law. But I think that's important for transparency's sake. So I just wanted to bring that up, that this is something I would like to see Creighton do for a few of our committees, so that I'm not hearing from committee members, some of who are community members, some of who are teachers, like feeling like their voice, they can't speak up in fear of retaliation or something. I'm hearing those things and would like to see some more transparency for such a big decision.
So I'm very familiar with Governing Board Policy BDF. I think Amy hit the nail on the head with the concern that when you form an advisory committee, when the board requires a committee, that's basically the difference, then that is going to advise the board on whatever, budget, policies, then that committee has to comply with the open meeting law. That generally causes most school districts to shy away from having board appointed committees, except in very rare instances. And I don't know if Julie can speak to her experiences with that, just because you have to make sure that, first of all, if you're complying with the open meeting law, those meetings have to be open to the public. And so there may be budget discussions that you all want to have as the members of the school district, not that it's not going to be transparent at some point, but the making of the sausage is a very difficult issue, right? And you guys are going to be in a hard budget year this year, as is everyone statewide. So that's, I just caution you and say those things. I don't know if Julie can speak to it. If you choose to have an advisory committee, what that means is the board's authorized that committee. The board would choose who's going to be the representative of the board on that committee. And you would be in compliance with the open meeting law. The only school district that I know that actively uses an advisory committee, and I don't know if they still are, but they did some time ago, was Gilbert Unified had a standing policy committee that met as an open meeting law. They met at the same time every 2 weeks, and they went over policies. That's the only district that I know that's used that process. And I don't know if you can speak to PV, Julie, or
yeah, we don't
answer that question. So
yeah, we don't have any board committees at all. They're all superintendent committees, and in general, board members aren't included on those, although there are a couple of committees the superintendent has that board members are part of the committee. So the challenge is the open meeting law piece, because it's not just then board members who are adhering to open meeting law. Everybody on the committee has to understand open meeting law, so they can't be talking to each other about it. They've got to be really careful, and I think that's a danger sometimes of those committees, that if you don't understand open meeting law, how do you adhere to it? And it's hard enough for board members and employees to understand it. So if you have community members on there too, so that's just something. It doesn't mean it can't happen and it can't be successful. It can be. There's just a lot of steps along the way, I think, to making sure that you're following state statute.
I have a quick question. I know that we're trying to move past this, but so to touch base on that real quick. So if one of us, let's say we chose Amy to be, instead of creating like this advisory committee, let's say we as a board decided, you know what, like Amy can go and sit into the budget committees that are going on. And then during our board meetings, she can give us the feedback of it. Would that be breaking any type of laws or anything? Like if one of us wanted to be involved in a committee?
Great question, Sophia. If and it's a nuanced answer. If you as a board vote that Amy is going to sit on the budget committee, you've then created an advisory committee under BDF, or you're at the verge. So, but if Dr. Lewis says one of you may attend, if as the committee of the budget committee, a board member is included in that, as Julie said, most of the time board members aren't going to be included because, again, it's kind of the same advisory about don't get too involved in the student issues or the teacher issues. If you're way down deep in the muck, how do you govern from that 30,000 view, you know? So that is generally, you know, that oversight, overstep, careful line. But that said, it's not against the law for a committee to have a board person also be on that committee. But if the board appoints that person, then you've moved into having to comply with the open meeting law.
Okay, so then I guess my question is not appointing somebody, but if I wanted, I guess that's what I'm trying to, that's the real question I'm asking is, am I breaking any type of violation or law if I go in and sit in a committee that I feel like I'm interested in? Is there something in writing that says, no, you're a board member, you're not allowed to be in any of these committees?
There's nothing in writing that says that you wouldn't be allowed to go in. If you go in and two other board members go in, then we've got a problem, right?
Right. I understand that part. I'm just saying as a single person, you know, because I know people have different interests of different things, and that's just what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm not breaking any type of, and then if we
some of the committees are closed, like your meet and confer, I think is a closed IBN negotiations. So you wouldn't be invited to come in because they're trying to do that work and they've established the protocol for doing that work. And Heather's nodding her head. I know she's, you know, involved with Isaac's Education Association, so she's aware of those. So in some instances, it's not that you're not welcome, but they've established these protocol that say only these people are going to be there.
Right. So, and that I understand that. I was just making sure that there was nothing saying, oh, like, no, you're breaking a violation if you show up to this committee.
No.
Yeah. So I would caution you to not show up, because, you know, there is that dynamic when a board member walks in the room. Oh, you know, you've got to be really careful about that. So if board members are going to serve on a committee, the superintendent really should be the person asking for that volunteer. Now, you can let the superintendent know as a board, you'd like people on these two committees. You know, you're not going to vote to do it, you know, that because that's not, again, that makes it something that it doesn't need to be. So I think it sounds like you probably need to have conversation around what committees are important to what board members, and maybe Lindsay and Dr. Lewis work together to kind of figure out how to make that happen, if that seems something that people want to do. And Lindsay, is that your hand up? I just wanted to, okay.
Yeah, no, I just, and I see both pieces of it. I've been on like the capital planning committee and other district committees, and I can say, like, I mean, it's a lot of just messy going through every line item, you know, and so I just wanted to echo Jennifer's point that, you know, the transparency should be there, but it also isn't our role as the board to micromanage all of those tiny little pieces. So I think that's just kind of a careful line to walk. But I do agree, you know, having that transparency, and I am wary about the advisory committees. If, you know, there's interest in kind of seeing where, you know, what does the, you know, budget committee look like? What does a meeting look like? And Dr. Lewis wants to, you know, have somebody come sit in. I think that would be a better approach to do so. But the reality is, you know, staff act differently, teachers act differently. You know, when a board member walks in, and because I know the sentiment has been, well, we want to break down that culture. And I agree, but I don't think it's a culture. I think it's a personality thing. Like, when I was a teacher on those committees, would have had no issue with Amy or Hanel or anyone else coming in, and I would have spoken the same way. But I also know people on that committee that just, their personality traits, they're a little more shy, they are a little more easily intimidated. So, and I think you have to respect that about the committees, and that they do work so hard, and that we want to make sure the transparency is there, and that board members feel comfortable about the process and have trust in the committees doing that hard work. But we also want to respect those individuals in that committee and make sure we're not indirectly kind of thwarting their ability to speak freely and things like that. So.
And Lindsay
Well,
brings up
our practice has been, I mean, when Kathy Ring became a board member, she was, my understanding, prohibited from continuing to serve on the budget committee. My recollection is I've asked to go to a committee meeting and have been told staff does not want you there. So I understand the intimidation factor, but I think it's just incredibly critical, like, that we have more transparency on these budget committees based on what happened last year on both committees and the feedback that I heard. So maybe there's a happy medium in between these two, but you know, it'd be great to see minutes of the meetings, which would be required on the advisory committee. But I get the challenge of the open meeting law. But I'd like to see our culture change too, where like a board member could pop in to budget committee meetings, you know, as arranged, you know, but that's not something that's going to stall the creativity, the hard work that needs to be done. I mean, we need to be going into classrooms as well. You know, this is part of our job. So I think we need to find a happy medium, and I look forward to doing that.
I'm glad you brought up minutes too, because that isn't something that, I mean, there's internal, you know, people take notes, but the process of having, you know, minutes just to see where committees are along the way, especially, you know, when you have things where there won't be a formal presentation for 2 months, I think minutes would be appropriate. I know, you know, at the school site level, that's done, you know, committees that meet, the minutes are shared with the staff, just as a, here's where we are. And I think that would be kind of that happy medium. That would be one piece that would help with that.
Yeah, and just to end it on my part, and I won't say anything else, but my intention in saying these things aren't to like micromanage anybody. Like obviously that's their job, that's what they're to do. But the sentiment that I have behind it is exactly what Amy was saying, is that culture. I know of many other school districts that have governing boards that pop into schools like nothing, and they're openly welcome. It's something that has obviously accumulated through the years. It's not going to happen overnight. But I ran a whole campaign on that, you know, the communication. I was that parent that had no idea who sat on the governing board, what the governing board even did. I had to find out that information on my own. So just having that kind of communication with, you know, I think it's really upsetting or sad when teachers are scared, you know, of speaking up of certain things. It's just like a culture thing. I'm not there saying like, I want to be in this committee, I want to be there every single day and I want all the information to me. No, I want to be able to pop in if I wanted to, like my agenda was clear today and I was like, hey, I think there's a budget committee meeting today. Maybe I should just go say hi and just listen in and leave. Am I going to sit there the whole time? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But having that ability to do those things, I don't think it's breaking the law, and I don't think, frankly, I should be asking for permission to do it either. Just to be frank and honest, it's not. I think we're all adults and we're elected officials. It's not like we randomly said, I'm going to be here and run this. I think we should be able to do that if we did. Am I going to sit there and do it the whole time? And I understand maybe people in the past have taken taken it out of context or done it for their personal agenda, whatever, but I'm new. I want to soak up as much information I can, and I want people to put a name to my face, like I want them to be like, oh, that's Sophia, she's one of the governing board members, and not be this person who nobody knows and nobody can, I'm not approachable, because that's not how it is. That's just my 2 cents of it.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. I think and I think Jennifer probably is unmuted because she's going to say the same thing. The pop-in is a little bit hard, because if you decide to pop in and Heather decides to pop in and Amy decides to pop in, you've got a problem. So I think there are ways that in these communication protocols, I think there is a way to allow that to happen, but in a more formal way, so that Hilda isn't getting panicked phone calls from school principals saying, I have 3 board members here. Oh my, so I think you just have to be, there has to be, I think, process. And I know it totally messes up any spontaneity because, we're all busy people. And there are times when you're right. Like I did this once. I just popped into an art show at a school and there were 2 board members there and I didn't know. I had not RSVP'd. I did not know if it had been posted. So I just turned around and walked out. And that gave people a little bit of, heartbeat when I got there. So that's the only thing that I would say, to be careful about. And Jennifer, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I think you've hit all the cautionary tales. It goes back to number one, creating that open dialogue so that staff know, so Donna can alert staff that you're coming, so that there's not more than 2 of you there. You want to go to the parent school committee meeting that your schools host. You're a parent at that school and a board member, absolutely, you should go, but just trying to make sure that you're making sure that everybody knows, so that there isn't an open meeting law violation, and so that staff can prepare and make sure that they are putting their best foot forward, because nobody, even though all of you seem very approachable and you're very real people, God, that makes my heart happy. You are going to discover as you step on the campuses that there's a heightened alert, just because you're on the board and you're ultimately their boss, in some way. So,
well, and anytime you want to join a committee, just call Hilda or me and we'll find a way to get that to happen. It's not hard. We can make that happen so that you can sit in and observe. I think the hard part is when you're trying to learn what they're talking about. If they've had 9 weeks of conversation and the complexity of the conversation feels like, well, a board member said, and so it's hard for them not to see you as a board member rather than a community observer. And that's the other role distinction. And so, go ahead and give Hilda a call. And as committee meetings come up, we'll plug in times and let all board members know. And then we can either notice the public that you're coming in or notice the committee that you're coming in, whether it's as an individual or all 5 of you. And we still offer that same access to all board members. I've had governing board members say to me in the past, well, how come Joey board member gets to go to everything? It's like, well, Joey makes himself available and he goes. Well, why does he have access to information that I don't have? Well, he showed up. So there's that aspect from other board members in other lives I've lived. I haven't had that here. But I've had people wonder why some board members have more information than the other. So the vetting process and the work of the committee is intended to come after they've vetted the bad ideas, the ugly ideas, the silly ideas, the ridiculous ideas with the, oh my gosh, we found it. Let's bring that to the board and tell them the bad ideas, the ugly ideas, the silly ideas, and how we popped on this decision and why we're now bringing 47 hours worth of work to them in about a 12-minute period of time. It keeps you at the 30,000 foot view, and it lets the staff go through the grit of problem identification and problem solving. So, I'd like to maintain a culture of total transparency, including the good, the bad, the silly, the ugly, and then encourage you guys as a body to stay informed in a similar fashion. But I can absolutely set up observation times for any and all board members as committees are working. We can make that happen.
Okay, that sounds good. I think the other thing, we're past our time to quit. So I'm sorry that we didn't get through everything. I think one of the things in looking at your communication protocols that I would include in it is site visit protocols. You don't have anything in there about the site visits. And so what that looks like, how a board member goes about doing a site visit, and the expectations.
And we do have a policy on that. I'm surprised it's not included, but we will get it to everybody in the next board update.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very similar. We schedule through Hilda.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm leaving this all hanging, and it doesn't sit well with my systematic side, but that's what's going to happen. So I think it'd be great. I mean, my recommendation would be, again, to go through your communication protocols one by one, item by item, so that the new board members are fully aware of what that is, what that looks like. And then I would also recommend, Donna, I think you brought this forward, the governing board expectations, because it's a totally new board. So item by item, going through that. And if you need outside facilitation, we're happy to help. If you don't, that's fine. But those would be a couple of things that I would recommend going forward.
There's two things we're going to do. We're going to set up a study session for Budget 101. And I think that's just to make sure we all get on the same page about budget in general, because there's about 17 different major basic venues to understand. So Jay and I are talking about a February Budget 101 study session, and then we'll bring communication protocol and budget, board expectations forward for a second study session. I don't know if that'll be February or March, and we'll set that up as well. And then I'm hoping that each of you, as you reflect on the day, as you think about the team building exercise, Julie, that was really fun. Thank you. As you think about the authentic conversation you had, as you reflect on the first night as a board, and the feelings that were there, and the communication that happened. As you think about that, the advice we got from both Julie and Jennifer on open meeting law or serial communication. As you think about continued developing awareness of policies that were introduced, and I know they weren't studied deeply, but we'll challenge them as they come forward. If you'll type in the chat a highlight for you for this morning, maybe that's the way we can close, Julie, if that's okay.
Yes, the only thing I want to add, Donna.
Yes, please.
Did not get to talk about was selecting the board president, a process that is before the vote. Something that happens ahead of time. So two things. One, in my school district, every fall we have a study session on budget, and we talk about who wants to serve as board president for the coming year. Not a vote, not anything other than, hey, I'd like to do it. Or Lindsay saying, hey, I'm not doing this again, so someone else is going to have to do it, or whatever that looks like. And really talk about what are our big ticket issues coming up in this next year, and who's best suited to deal with them. You know, so one of the things that we did when I was board president was we changed our policy manual from our own policies to ASBA policies, and two board presidents were like, I'm not doing that. I said, I'm going to take that on because we need to do it. We've been putting it off, whatever. So I was board president that year. So, and then the other option is to not immediately take a motion for board president at that organizational meeting.
Yeah.
Say, this is our organizational meeting. Let's discuss the board presidency instead of what we have started to affectionately call the quick draw method, where someone says something and that's it. It just stifles conversation. So those are two things to think about, and maybe that's something you talk about in a study session at some point. So that was the only thing that I didn't get to give a little advice about.
Your experience is invaluable, and Julie, I knew when we were talking as we were preparing this agenda, and with Lindsay and the other board members' inputs that I've had a chance to talk to, that we had a lot crammed in. But Jennifer, I'm not sure if you're going to plan to stay with us. Hope you will.
I think you were going to talk about strategic plan. I wasn't planning on being here, but I'm available.
I think we're fine. It's more of a brush up on where we've been over the last few years. It's not anything as far as actionable, or it'll just be an interesting awareness and develop of what's been going on after we stop for a lunch break. But if I could ask everybody to go ahead and thank you, Jennifer. You've been invaluable. Thank you for your comments. So I'm just looking at the board chat, and I'm going to read them so that we can make sure they're in our recording. I'm super impressed, and I see a lot. I see a board readiness to grow and learn together, honest reflections. Thanks from Amy to the great facilitation of Julie, as always. Lindsay, I enjoyed the team styles activity and learning more about one another, and appreciated the honest conversations. Thank you, Julie and Jennifer, for your guidance. Heather, I see a group of people who can be open about their feelings and know that we can move forward knowing this. Thanks for being here, Jennifer, says Amy. So I hope you all feel the great appreciation. Julie, I know this feels quick and yet we strung it out a little bit.
Yeah,
You did an amazing job. Can we give
Thank you,
Julie
guys.
a hand and Jennifer a hand?
Thank you. I love being with board, so it's an honor to help. So thank you.
It shows in everything you do, and your expertise and advice is always valued. Thank you. So what I'm going to suggest, since it is 12:15, that we return, Hilda, can we return at 12:45 so everybody has a full solid half hour?
Well, we're posted for 12:30. So what are your thoughts, Jennifer? Wait, you just muted yourself.
If you're posted for 12:30, I would just have you get on at 12:30 and indicate that the board's taking another 15-minute recess and wait. So I think Hilda can announce that to whoever's on the call, that wouldn't be a violation.
Okay.
Does everybody feel the need for a half hour just to step away, walk away, eat some lunch? Thumbs up if you want a full half hour. Thumbs up from Amy. Thumbs up from Sophia, from Lindsay, and Heather. I see nothing, but you're good either way. All right, with that many people saying 12:45, we will see you back at 12:45. Remember, it's a WebEx, so we're closing out of this one. Julie, thank you. Jennifer, thank you. Everybody, great morning. Thank you very much. Look forward to our next conversation. See you in a half hour.
Good lunch, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Julie.
Bye, Jay.